then there's a combination of guys that can fill in center. Obviously, you got Carlson. You want to see Burleson out there from time to time. I'd like to see Donovan early on in camp just at one position, then bounce around based on his limitations of throwing. Sagasi, you can see some time over at short. You can see some time over at third, and then at second as well. But there's a combination of guys that could bounce around based on Tommy not being ready.
What are Donnie's limitations right now?
He's throwing. He's doing well, but once we start games, I'd like to not push it and bounce him around too much. I'd like him to just play one position, get used to it, and then slowly progress him to do other things.
That's Ollie Marble yesterday talking about Tommy Edman, the limitations that currently exist for him. That's totally fine. It is February 15th. It will be much less fine if we are having the same conversation in about a month from now. Alex, the Cardinals have opening day coming up on March 28th. They will be in Los Angeles. They're taking on the Dodgers, a behemoth of the National League. If you lose 3 out of 4 in that series, it's not the end of the world. People will feel that way, but it will not be the end of the world. But if you're playing and you feel like Tommy Edman's going to be limited for a decent amount of time early on in the season with the way that you have constructed your roster, it does have some serious trickle-down effects of what that means elsewhere on your roster. Katie Wu had in her piece over at The Athletic earlier today that Edman has been cleared to do some baseball activities. However, his throwing and hitting programs are likely to take most, if not all, of spring to complete. She adds, while Edman was one of the first position players to report to camp last week, his workload will indeed be impacted by his recovery progress, especially early this spring.
Death taxes and the Cardinals making an injury to be less than what it actually is once spring training opens.
A reminder, we didn't even know that Tommy Edman had surgery on his wrist until, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, winter warm-up.
Because Mo forgot to let people know that prior to... early in November, which is apparently like when this took place. Alex, I would be curious your thoughts. What do you believe is the biggest effect if Tommy Edman ends up being out longer than what they previously had suggested?
I mean, the effect is your defense at center field. Your effect is now you don't have the utility that you thought you were going to have here. To me, the biggest impact with all of this is, cool, so Tommy Edman's going to be unavailable. This might be exaggerating, but let's go worst case scenario. He's going to miss the first month of the season. Do you feel comfortable that Dylan Carlson is your starting center fielder for defensive purposes for an entire month? Because I don't. I think that trickle-down effect puts a lot more onus on both Jordan Walker and Lars Nootbaar to be really good defensively in the corners, which maybe they will be. But I think Tommy Edman, which seems crazy to say because he wasn't expected to be the center fielder until this offseason, puts a little bit of a safety net around those two guys in terms of his defenses and his route running. So that is the first part of this trickle-down effect of Dylan Carlson's out there. But then the also other part of this is if things go south for Mason Wynn, you have no plan B. Mason Wynn doesn't look right. Mason Wynn's batting .042 in spring training. Cool, you're a starting shortstop. Doesn't matter, which I'm fine with, but the Cardinals will probably panic. But I think this has a more of an impact to this team negatively than people are leading it on to be.
Yeah, I think it locks in Mason Wynn as the everyday starting shortstop no matter what. If they did have those questions and they continued to kind of raise them, it feels like, of, Wynn, if he's not showing it offensively, I don't know if he can be the starting shortstop. Man, if Edman misses time to begin the year, Wynn needs to be locked into place because you just don't have a backup at shortstop. Like, I know Katie mentioned, Brendan Donovan. Well, that's fine if, he had to come in for, 4 innings, not a 2-week stretch potentially. So, and I personally would say that they need to go to the market and find a capable defensive center fielder like Michael A. Taylor on a minor league deal. Bring him in, have him get ready to go, and he probably starts until Tommy Edman's back, and then you just DFA him. So that's the way that I would view it because I don't trust Carlson in center field for a long extended time. I think he's just an okay center fielder, and I think as this team has talked about, they want to get back to playing great defense, and I would worry about having Carlson in center field not being this reliable pillar. I would prefer they go out and get somebody in center field like a Michael A. Taylor who's still on the market.
I also don't trust Dylan Carlson's health. If we're going to sit here and act as if he's going to be the picture of health to start this season, I think you're fooling yourself. And if he's not healthy, well, now who's your center fielder? Lars Nootbaar, and you're putting Alec Burleson in left field or Brendan Donovan in left field? This has more of an impact to this team than people are acting as if it does.
I think it would be fine.
Okay.
If I'm being totally honest here,
Hold on.
actually
Hold on.
wouldn't be
You
all
think
that
it will
worried.
be fine?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, if this is something that's going, I don't know what Tommy Edman's actual injury is because they won't tell us. They won't say what happened, what led to the injury, why it is such a long process to get back from. I'm always worried about wrists and thumbs. Wrists and thumbs for hitters are the two things that scare the hell out of me, especially if you're talking about a guy that has any pop whatsoever. And while we don't really think about Tommy Edman as this like big power bat, the guy does have a little bit of power, and that's actually where he extracts his value from, especially if he's going up against left-handed pitching. That is where his value comes from, is that he does have a little more pop in that bat than what you would expect. That being said, if this is just a few weeks, if this is something where, hey, man, he's going to be ready to go like at 100% by May 1st, do I think Dylan Carlson is a passable center fielder for a month? I actually really do. I don't think Dylan Carlson is a 162-game full season starting center fielder. I don't. But I think you can get away with that guy starting for you in center field for a month. I don't think his defense is so much worse than Tommy Edman's that you are suddenly going to have a bad outfield defense. That will be based upon Jordan Walker's defense in right field more so than anything that you see from Dylan Carlson in center. My concern is, what if this isn't just a small thing? What if this becomes a thing that does linger into the regular season, and now maybe his defense takes a step back? Maybe his throwing is a little worse than it was a year ago when it was already a negative, a liability for you in center field. And now him chasing down the ball, while yes, still valuable, his throwing arm is so bad in center that it becomes like what Marcell Ozuna was in left field for you previously.
Throw it to somebody to throw the ball?
That is unacceptable. So I'm not trying to be the like, oh my God, the sky is falling guy. But this is the kind of injury early in camp that we at least need to keep an eye on, because it does have a trickle-down effect of, okay, now Mason Wynn is locked in as your everyday shortstop. And if they don't view it that way, oh boy, now you're getting into a place where like Brendan Donovan might be asked to play shortstop for you, and Dylan Carlson's in center field for you. And now you have Nolan Gorman, Brendan Donovan, and Dylan Carlson up the middle with Wilson Contreras behind the plate. Now you're a negative defensively at every single one of those positions, or at best, you're average. When going into the season, we were expecting a plus defender in center, a plus defender at shortstop, and that could make up for at least average at best at second base and behind the plate.
I am so sorry, T-Bone. I'm so surprised at how many people are pushing back with what T-Bone and I said about how, like, oh, Dylan Carlson's better than Tommy Edman defensively in center field. I don't know what you're concerned about. Are we forgetting that, like, 4 months ago, people were just completely done with Dylan Carlson? And now we're acting as if he's going to be the savior to your center field position?
So I think what people would say as a retort to that, Alex, and it's funny because I'm actually on the other side of this. I'm where you guys are if we're talking about center field for the entirety of the season. But I think what people would say is actually they thought Dylan Carlson was fine in center field. I never did. I always felt like Dylan Carlson was overmatched for that position. I think he's a corner outfielder. There's nothing wrong with being that. I think he is to center field what Lars Nootbaar is to center field. Can he play it? Yeah, I think he can. Do you want him to be your everyday center fielder? No, I don't think so.
I think people are thinking too much with their heart with Dylan Carlson, hoping that this young kid still has an opportunity to become what the Cardinals thought he was. And it just seems like in this room, we've all come to the conclusion that Cardinals fans haven't seen the gotten to yet. Like, hey, he's not what they thought he was. And that's my concern. You're going back. You're doing with Dylan Carlson what you've done with Paul DeJong for the last 5 years. You're going back to hoping that the guy can get to the level of expectation you thought he was, and I'm kind of ready to pass that baton to somebody else.
And one thing that is, at least the way I would view it too, though, is if this does happen and Carlson is the center fielder come opening day because of this injury to Tommy Edman, at least it's not like you lose a offensive bat, because we've all gone into the season saying when Edman hitting probably 8-9 in your lineup, and anything you get from them is a bonus offensively. Carlson falls right into that category. And look, maybe this would end up playing out just a little bit better, because I'm still thinking back to last year's squad when I have my concerns about Carlson. Why do I love the idea of Edman in center field? Because he's A, I think he can actually play it better than Dylan Carlson, but B, I think it's because he can help close those gaps for Jordan Walker, for example, in right field. Now, if Walker takes steps forward defensively and ends up being like average at this time come opening day compared to last year, it was like way below average, then you know what? Maybe that helps kind of mask the fact that you don't really have a center fielder roaming center field, and it ends up playing a little bit better than the way that I'm thinking. But I would still have enough concern for, if this would be only like a 1-2 week injury, you know what? I'd be fine with Carlson. If it is more than that and it is more of a lingering issue for Tommy Edman, I just don't think they have a long-term guy on the roster that can play center field.
People on the text line are bringing up the possibility of Victor Scott playing in center field as your replacement. I'm of two minds on this, because if we're going down the positive route, why you would consider that, what we're hoping for from Tommy Edman as your starting center fielder this year is basically the following. Gold glove defense, figure out what the offense looks like. If it's just mediocre, you're fine. The reason why, and I think you could get that out of Victor Scott. In fact, I think the defense would be better than what you're getting out of Tommy Edman. I think the offense has the potential to be significantly worse early on, though, because we talked about this with, I talked about it with Alec Burleson at winter warm-up this year, and he said the gap between what pitching is in the minor leagues and what it is in the majors, he can't believe how wide it is right now. And I think it was maybe Ollie Marmol, I can't remember who it was, but somebody else said it's wider than it's ever been. In the history of his time in the game, he's never seen a bigger gap between what the pitching level is in AAA versus what it is right now in the majors. And there's a lot of reasons for that we can get into another day. If you're Victor Scott and you get buried offensively early on, there is a mental component to the game where you don't want one of your top prospects to then feel like he's underwater for the rest of the season and to lose all of his confidence. Now, what is the likelihood of that? I don't know, but the dude barely, he spent last year in Double-A, and now suddenly we're going to bring him up to the majors. I don't think Victor Scott is Jordan Walker, and that is the level of player that you need to be in order to make that kind of a jump. So it would make me nervous to do something like that, but I can see how you could convince yourself that that's your better option than going to Dylan Carlson every day in center field. Because again, despite what some of the metrics say, despite what I know many of our listeners believe, there is a gap defensively between what Dylan Carlson is and what the expectation is for Victor Scott.
I wouldn't do that with Victor Scott. I mean, you could tell me Dylan Carlson or you could tell me Tommy Edman's out for the season and Dylan Carlson's still hurt, and I still wouldn't bring up Victor Scott. I'd go to the free agent market. I'd go sign somebody to play defense for me in center field and figure it out offensively. I think you're jeopardizing the growth of a young player who had a really good season last year, who's got all of the expectations in the world, but I feel like you're rushing that player to that position. Especially, you're not just putting him in there to be a major leaguer, you're making him a major leaguer and an everyday player for the Cardinals. And I just wouldn't do it. I'd give Michael A. Taylor a contract like T-Bone mentioned, and I'd keep Victor Scott in AAA until the trade deadline.
You guys would trust Michael A. Taylor over Dylan Carlson in center field every day?
No, I said if you didn't have Dylan Carlson and Tommy Edman.
Yeah, and there's no reason to believe that will happen.
I would defensively in center if it was a month period. If it is only 2 weeks and it is like just a 10-day IL stint and Edman's back by, the home opener, which I think is 6 or 7 days after the season starts. Again, I don't mind Carlson in short spurts. You're going to even get that probably this year when Edman needs days off. But if it is a long extended period of time and they talk about getting back to playing elite defense this year and kind of those pillars up the middle that you mentioned, I just don't know if he's the guy for them.
That's the latest from Cardinals camp alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we're going to talk to Joey Vitale. He always brings the mood up here on the show. We'll talk to him coming up at 11:30. You guys can check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. The Graveyard is off and running over there. They're mad at us for our Victor Scott and Dylan Carlson takes.
Really?
So get in over there. That's where the chat is, the Graveyard on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. The studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. You guys can always get involved as well. 314-399-9646. That is where the Air Comfort Service text line is. But coming up next, there were 2 Super Bowl storylines yesterday with significant impact for this offseason in the NFL. One in San Francisco, one with the Chiefs. We'll tell you what they were, and I would like to get some thoughts out on yesterday here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at 100 West Dental. I have found my new dentist, and let me tell you, it makes life very easy knowing who I'm going to and having that trust factor into it. And you might be like me, who had the anxiety about going to the dentist, didn't really care. You just had to go get it done and make sure you're done with it all. Well, let me tell you, that's not the way to go about it. You need to make sure you've got a dentist that is looking out for you, taking care of you and your mouth in the long run. Maybe your teeth are sensitive when you eat certain certain food. Maybe when you floss, your gums bleed. Maybe you got this weird taste in your mouth. All of those things could affect your overall health because you haven't gotten with the proper dentist. And Dr. Pryor and his team are that dentist for you. They got a brand new office in Manchester, the most modern technology, and they want the patient experience to be at its best. I had a buddy who went out there, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and said it was the best dentist experience he has had in a long time. So go check them out. You can schedule online. You can even do online consultation with Dr. Pryor. And they got an Invisalign package right now where if you mention my name, Alex Ferrario, they'll take $1,000 off of that Invisalign package. So check them out, 100westdental.com. Get with the best at 100 West.
There are a couple of things yesterday in the NFL that I wanted to get to. The first one is a big story coming out of San Francisco. Right after we got off the air, Alex, it was announced that, hey, Kyle Shanahan is going to have a press conference coming up here in just a little bit. I was like, okay, that's weird. He already had his end-of-season press conference. He sounded like everything was hunky-dory. We were going into the offseason and see if the 49ers can make it back to the Super Bowl again in 2025. And immediately upon him arriving on the stage, he said, hey, I've decided to relieve Steve Wilks, our defensive coordinator, of his duties. It's like, whoa, didn't you guys just make the Super Bowl?
Yeah, because that was the problem with the Super Bowl.
Didn't you hold Patrick Mahomes to 3 points in the first half of that Super Bowl? And then, they found a way to find answers to your defense, which is, what Patrick Mahomes tends to do.
Just trying to be like, hey, don't look over here that I forgot the overtime rules. Let's blame him.
And that's been the response by a decent amount of NFL fans across the country is, hey, were you really going to do that? Like, are we blaming this on Steve Wilks? I had a different response. I get it. I don't blame them for doing this. I thought going into that game, one of the main reasons why I didn't believe that the 49ers would beat the Chiefs is because they didn't have a Mike McDonald. They didn't have a Steve Spagnuolo. They didn't have a Vic Fangio. If you don't have one of those guys that's going to be creative, that's going to have multiple answers for the looks that the Chiefs are giving you, I don't think that over the course of a 60-minute game, you can confuse Patrick Mahomes enough to be able to win that game. They had a very good plan for the first quarter. And then as things started to progress, you saw more and more answers from Patrick Mahomes on what they were doing. It was the opposite against the Baltimore Ravens. The Chiefs came out with some stuff early on against Baltimore, and as their defensive coordinator had more time to adjust to it, it was like, oh boy, he found the answers. He figured out what Mahomes is trying to do, and they shut them down for the vast majority of the rest of the game. So if I'm Kyle Shanahan and I see what just happened in that Super Bowl, and I see really what happened all year long. The 49ers defense, while ranked high in terms of the points per game and stuff, everything under the hood suggested, hey, this is a house of cards. This is not going to be sustainable if you play the same way next year. You're really lucky that you have Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Charvarius Ward, who had a great season this year. If this happens again next year and any of those three goes down, you're screwed. I think he saw the defense wasn't as good as the numbers indicated, and we have to get somebody better in here. So I understand that people think that Steve Wilkes was done wrong here. I get all of that. It's a really bad optics. I think it was the right move by the 49ers, and I think it's the first thing they had to do to get back to the Super Bowl in 2025.
The first thing that popped out to me when hearing him talk about it was Shanahan talking about we want to get a coordinator in here that knows how to play this system and has been a part of this type of system that we like to run for the last however many years. And I was surprised that he had said that because, wasn't the whole reason you're bringing in Steve Wilkes is because you feel like he can address the system that you play on the defensive side of the ball. But the hard part for me to understand with this is, they were so dominant, and you might be right. The underlying numbers might have been screaming in front of you like, hey, this isn't going to last. But it was so dominant. The whole purpose of the San Francisco 49ers was this defense is going to run you out of the building. And
See,
because
I didn't feel that way. I felt like their offense was what was dominant.
Agreed, but I felt like the narrative.
I think the defense had names that didn't live up to the expectation.
But the narrative was this is going to be a tough defense to handle. And they may not have backed it up.
Coming into the year.
Yeah. I felt like it was the same narrative going throughout the playoffs as well.
They got crushed by Green Bay in the first half of that game. They got destroyed by the Detroit Lions for the vast majority of that game. And if not for a couple of fourth down calls that ended up obviously going against the Detroit Lions and a couple of turnovers in that game, the Detroit Lions lost that game themselves more than the 49ers wanted. And the 49ers defense had very little to do with the 49ers winning that game. And then you go to the Super Bowl, it's not all on the defense, don't get me wrong. Defense didn't help them. What they did in the second half, they didn't have any answers for what Mahomes was presenting to them. So I think it was a totally reasonable decision by Kyle Shanahan, even though I totally agree with you, Alex. The optics on this are terrible. But who cares about optics when you're trying to win a Super Bowl, man? This team's stated goal on opening day of next year will be, we are trying to get back. And the best way to do that, because you don't have a lot of time, we know these windows are really they're small in the NFL. You got to go out and get the best possible coach to be able to get you back there. And I don't think Steve Wilkes was that guy. We saw him with Mizzou. We saw him in Carolina. We saw him with Arizona. I think Steve Wilkes is a pretty good coach. I think if he's like a transition quarterback. If he's your defensive coordinator, I think you're always kind of having your eye towards the next hotshot candidate. And once you get that guy, you're like, this is the one that we were looking for. It sucks. I feel bad for Steve Wilkes, but it's the reality.
Yeah, it does suck for him. And you think back to his last real 3-4 years, it's been just a wild ride for Steve Wilkes. But he didn't really. The biggest thing for me in the Super Bowl is he didn't adjust. The whole beginning of the game was just a four-man rush, and then it just stuck with it. And I think you could see the tea leaves of Kyle Shanahan's frustration. Remember, I think it was in that final drive for the Chiefs where they go down and kick the field goal to tie it up. He calls a timeout, and you can just see he is furious, and he's yelling on the headset.
He was mad at the call. He didn't like the cover zero call on that play.
Exactly. He was getting into it with Steve Wilkes, and I think what happened in his comments, you brought him up, Alex, about him saying, we want a guy that runs our system. Essentially what he is saying is, me and Steve Wilkes did not agree on how to run this defense. Yep. And Kyle Shanahan is a great offensive mind that started out on the defensive side of the ball because that way you learn what defenses are doing against you. And I think he saw that, hey, this isn't sustainable. So I think that's why he made the change. I know the optics look bad, but hey, now it comes down to this hire. If this hire ends up backfiring on him and it doesn't work, then Kyle Shanahan should be crushed. And honestly, it could be a fireable offense from him.
100%.
If it works out and it goes better than it was this year and the defense is better, then 100% correct decision by Kyle Shanahan.
All right, the other big news yesterday was Chris Jones, who got up on the stage at the Chiefs parade and had this to say about his future in Kansas City. By the way, reminder, he's an upcoming pending unrestricted free agent.
I need 3 of those things, baby. We ain't done yet. We ain't done yet. Kansas City, we will be back here next year. And for those who want Chris Jones gone, I ain't going nowhere, baby. Next year and the year after. 3P.
Hold on, let's do a live look into his agency right now.
Oh my God.
What's that? Chris Jones said what? Son of a, you gotta be kidding me!
So his agent actually did tweet.
Oh, yes.
Please cut off the bartenders. There's been too much beer.
Well, now the agent's like, great. Now he's going to get $1 million this upcoming season.
Yeah. Do we think that this will have any influence whatsoever on the negotiations this offseason?
Absolutely.
You do?
Yeah, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm like, well, look what you said, Chris.
Team-friendly deals.
3P. No, this has no stay on this.
Do you guys think he'll be back?
Yes.
I do now. Guys, you
I
don't-
kind of do too.
I think
You don't
Patrick
just-
Mahomes.
Yesterday changed things for me, and I don't know if that's reasonable. Maybe I'm being prisoner of the moment here, but I felt like that
I
guy's
didn't
going to
hear
be back.
Snead take them. I could go 3P.
But I also think with Mahomes saying that he was going to find a way to renegotiate that contract, that's also playing into Chris Jones coming back no matter what.
All right, so that was the beginning of the parade. I would like to take a couple of minutes here to talk about what happened afterwards. That was the fun and games, and then it all changed incredibly quickly. And I'm not about to lecture you guys or anything like that, but yesterday was a different kind of experience for me, and it hit me in a way that I was unprepared for. So you guys all know that I'm from Kansas City. I lived when I was there for a year between being here with Wheels and coming back and working with Stoltz and Rivs. I lived about 3 blocks away from where this all took place. I lived downtown right by Union Station. When I went to the Royals parade back in 2015, I was standing basically where all of this happened, right on the corner of Pershing next to Union Station. And so that part in and of itself hit me. The other part that hit me in a way that I was unprepared for is this was my first time that I've had to reach out to my friends and family who I knew were down at the parade and send the text of, "Are you okay?" My dad, I found out later, was pretty close to where this happened. He saw the beginnings. We've now seen the reports from the police that this was a disagreement that led to a shooting. My dad was there when that argument started and left because the argument in front of him was starting to escalate. If he hadn't left, I don't know what would have happened, dude. And so that was the response from my dad was we left just before this happened. I saw the update coming on my phone from somebody. And so that hits you. And then as you continue to get more and more information about what had taken place over the course of the day. I was on my run yesterday after I'd gotten home, and at this point it's 3:30, 4 o'clock or so, and I'm listening to the coverage, and they for the first time mention that there's kids that were shot there, man. And I'm not somebody that gets overly emotional in my personal life. Like, my wife had seen me cry, I think once, maybe twice in our 14 years of being together. I was on my run in the middle of St. Charles, right by 5th Street down towards downtown St. Charles area over there. I just immediately fell to the ground and broke down because all I could think about is my dad had asked me last weekend after the game on Sunday, hey, do you want to come in for the Super Bowl parade? I could have been there with our baby boy right in that area, and God only knows what could have happened, man. Nobody goes to something like this expecting this to happen, and yet it's happened for way too long. And I don't have all of the answers. I do sports radio for a living, man. We talk about stupid stuff that doesn't matter, that has zero consequences in life. We're talking about, is Tommy Edman going to be a problem for the Cardinals? That doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. What happened yesterday was my first experience that many of you have probably had, where you have to check in on your people to ask, because this mass casualty event took place, are you okay? My mom didn't get back to me quick, and so I called her and said, hey, are you good? I texted friends and tried to find out, were you in the area? Are you guys okay? And then once you see the dots pulling up that they are texting back, you just okay. I've never had an experience like what happened yesterday. I am still kind of grappling with what that all was. And so hug your loved ones when you get home today. You never know, man. That was a tough one, and it hit me really hard. I'm sure it hit many of you really hard. And when you ask people if they're okay, understand that the answer might be no today. I'm not doing great today. And a lot of people in Kansas City aren't doing great today. And a lot of you guys here in St. Louis that have seen this too many times aren't doing great today. We're going to get through the show. We're going to do it the way that we normally do. It's our last time talking about this, but I wanted to get my thoughts out there just because it this hit me in a personal way, given the personal connection to where it happened and my people that were right in that area. And it sucks, man. And something's got to be done. Something has to change because we can't keep having days like this. All right, we're going to get the vibes back up. Joey Vitale, nobody better to do it than him, next year on 101 ESPN.
The 95th season of Ted Drew's famous frozen custard off of Chippewa is officially underway. That's right, a St. Louis tradition since 1929. Family-owned and operated, is open off of Chippewa and ready for you to kick off the spring and summer season. It doesn't matter if it's still going to be cold and snowing in the next couple of days. Nothing matches better with the perfect end to a day than Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. And what I love about it are those family traditions. It always is about consistency and tradition. I remember when I was younger going there with my parents and walking all across the street there off of Chippewa and just talking with the family. And now I get to do that with my daughters. We get to sit in the back seat of the car, eat Ted Drew's, and just spend time together. And you can do those family traditions, or you just go out there with your friends and just enjoy the time together and check out all of the flavors that you can get. You can even buy it in the quart if you want to and bring it home and have it with you every once in a while for dessert. And while you're out there off of Chippewa, you can walk across the street and check out their gift shop. They've got a variety of unique apparel. You can get kids or adults, hats, drinkware, gift cards, so much more. And exciting news, they are hiring. So if you're looking for a job this spring or summer, check them out at teddrews.com. Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. It really is good, guys and gals.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they host the Edmonton Oilers, and we'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7, and Joey V joins us next year on BK and Ferrario. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffautoPlex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We are always happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline when our friend Joey Vitale is on the other side of the line. He's the Blues analyst for 101 ESPN and for Bally Sports Midwest. He joins us now here on BK and Ferrario. Joey, appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing this morning?
Joey! Welcome back, Joey!
What's up, fellas? aside from you guys needing to pass the tardy sauce, holy, what time's the 11:30 hit start here, fellas?
Yeah, sorry. Not to put you in a bad spot. I was talking about the shooting that happened yesterday, so I went a little long there. I apologize, Joey.
Yeah, no worries at all. No worries. Only kidding you guys. How you guys doing today?
We're doing okay. We'll make it through. Joe, what does it get you excited when you have the opportunity over the course of a couple of games to see somebody like Austin Matthews, and then in the next one you get two of the greatest hockey players in the world coming in here to St. Louis?
Yeah, I mean, aside from my kids bugging me to get everyone's autograph, I would say it's kind of fun. No, it's in all joking aside, it's amazing. I mean, you're looking at three of maybe the top, 7, 8, 9 players in the whole world, and back-to-back games. I mean, even let's throw for how well William Nylander's playing. I think he's a top 10 player in the league right now as well. So you look at all these wonderful players, of course, and then one of the all-time greats, in my opinion, on and off the ice, and Ryan O'Reilly coming to town on Saturday. So it really is special. But Connor McDavid certainly in the building here tonight. The first time the Blues have played Edmonton, which is a bit of a shock. But I think that, you look at talking to Matthew Kessel this morning in his locker room stall, first time he will be facing Connor McDavid here tonight. And I asked him how he was feeling. He said, a little nervous, a little anxious. It's obviously a pretty whirlwind situation when you're going up against him. But he's getting a lot of great advice from his teammates and his coaches. And for the fans of St. Louis, whenever you can see this spectacular, electrifying player on the ice, it really is special.
Yeah, Matthew Kessel, how are you going to handle this? Don't forget about the fact that you started this season off against Sidney Crosby, started off against Elias Pettersson, and now you get to go up against Connor McDavid. Here's what I'm curious about, Joe. You've played against some of the greats when you were in the NHL. From a player's perspective in today's game, how do you eliminate Connor McDavid?
Well, it's not easy, and it's a balance. There's not one way to shut it down. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. You hear the term all the time where you want to limit time and space on these really talented players. Well, yes and no. And, Matthew was telling me this morning, with the Connor McDavid, if you're next to him and he doesn't have the puck yet, if you're next to him, yeah, stay on him. Stick to him, right? So when he gets the puck, you do take away the time and space. But if he gets a little open ice or he's got a little bit of speed, that's not the time to close time and space, right? That's not the time is not there. It is almost to give him more of a cushion, give him more pace. Because if you try to close time and space when he has a little bit of room around you, that's when he makes you look pretty silly. Connor McDavid's a special player where I had a couple of defensemen who played with him tell me once, he's always looking at defensemen's skates. And this is very different than how a lot of players were taught. You're always told, when I was a kid, look at shoulders, look at hips. If the hips go one way, go the opposite way. You watch Connor McDavid when he skates in open ice. He'll be coming up in open ice. He'll get his linear crossovers going, and he's kind of got his peripheral vision on the defensive skates. And as soon as he sees those edges start to lean to the left, boom, that's when he goes to the right. And vice versa. He'll start to go to the right. The defenseman starts to lean with him, then boom. As soon as he sees a weight shift, that's when he goes the other way. And it's so on a dime. And that's what makes him so fast. Is he fast? Yes. But he looks so much faster than he really is. It's because he's basically using the defenseman as a pawn. Again, he'll be going to the right. The defenseman starts to lean that way. And as soon as that lean begins, it's like, shoot, it's right gone the other way. So the defenseman then has to stop his transition, transfer his weight, then go back over there. And by then, it's just, of course, as we've seen so many times in the league, it's just too much. So it's interesting to see what Connor McDavid's going to do. You know, he hasn't won a Stanley Cup yet. I think at the end of his current contract with Edmonton, he's going to be, I believe, 30 last I checked. He's got a few more years left. If they don't win a cup in the next 3 years, you know, what does he do? I mean, it's crazy to think that Connor McDavid could, as good as he was when he came into the league, could he possibly get to 30 without a cup? I think most people say you're crazy. Absolutely not. He's going to win one, maybe two or three. But it is quite possible that he may live out this rest of his contract without a cup, and that's when major decisions certainly need to be made for both Edmonton and Connor.
And that's when he comes to St. Louis, of course.
Yeah, obviously. He and Draisaitl.
Yeah, at least one of the two, we can go ahead and write it in pen. They will be here in St. Louis within the next few years. Joe, the team that you're going up against tonight in Edmonton has won 18 of their last 20 games. They've scored at least 3 goals in 16 of those 20 opportunities. And it's expected that Jordan Binnington will be in net tonight for St. Louis. It's going to be a big undertaking for him to be able to keep the puck out of the back of the net. And earlier today on ESPN.com, they had a ranking of the top 10 netminders in the NHL. Alex is very upset by this, as you would expect, because
just wait till you hear it, Joe.
Binnington was not a part of the top 10. In fact, he was not a part of the top 12. When you watch Jordan Binnington, do you see a top 10 goalie in the NHL right now, Joe?
Yeah, I do. I see a top 5. I mean, honestly, it's crazy. And what's crazy about how I would sum that up and where I would justify me putting him in a top 5 or even a top 3 at times, I think is because so much of those articles and so much of the accolades and why you come up and how you come up with these lists is solely based off of numbers. And listen, I know numbers are important, right? Goals against are important. Save percentage is important. I get all that. And I think, you know, in some ways you have to quantify and back up what you're saying. But the reality is this. I'm watching games, and I'm watching Jordan Binnington make the timely save, the save that is just needed in that particular time of the game. I mean, you know, it's unfortunate they allowed that third one to go in Toronto just to pass his left shoulder. But remember, he had stopped 2 breakaways when it was a 2-1 game. He had a shutdown save on a power play, one on Bertuzzi, one on Domi. Both were backdoor tap-ins on power plays. He kept both of those out. Those are 4 massively capital grade A chances. Toronto had a chance to go up by 2, and they didn't. Now, unfortunately, the Blues couldn't figure out a way to find the back of the net. They only manufactured 15 shots that night. But those are the type of saves that Binnington has made repeatedly. I also watch a goalie where when the game temperature goes up, he brings it up too. You know, he doesn't allow the simple shots to go in. I mean, I'm watching even a couple road trips ago with Markstrom and Joey Decord, you know, all these goalies and whatever. Yeah, they're making saves, but also these kind of goals are just sneaking by him where they really shouldn't sneak by him. Look at Jake Allen. As much as I love Jake, I think 3 or 4 of those goals are savable goals. I'm not seeing a lot of savable shots get past Binnington. The ones that are going in are the ones that repeatedly are those grade A, high-danger ones that eventually those are going to crack and you can't get a shutout every single game. So I would put Binnington in the top 5, and I think sometimes I would put him in the top 3 discussion. I think that he is a goalie that has proven himself as a champion. I mentioned how he's just the attitude and the poise just continues to rise when the game goes up too. So I think that this was something where you look at the goalie that St. Louis has, get into the playoffs. I mean, that's going to be Doug Armstrong's whole thing. If you make some moves, if you sell a little, you're going to have to add a little bit as well. Still get in because you're talking about a goaltender that without a doubt can at least steal you 1 series, maybe 2.
Joe, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy the game tonight. Had the opportunity to watch Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in person. Going to be a fun one, man. We'll talk with you again next week.
Hey, sounds good, boys. You guys have a great week.
You Joey. Do the same. That is Joey Vitale joining us as he does each and every Thursday here on BK and Ferrario. I do apologize to getting to Joey a little bit late today. That's on me. I take full responsibility. I went a little bit long with my monologue there, so I apologize. Coming up in about 10 minutes, the Greg Wyshynski list has Alex's blood boiling. We just talked a bit about that with Joey Vitale. Not a top 12 goalie in the NHL.
Get the bleep out of here.
We'll talk about that coming up at noon. Questions and answers is next here on 101 ESPN.
Joined by my insurance agent and good friend, Tracy Bibb of Allstate, who is always out there working for you. And if you're listening right now and you need a new insurance agent, or if you're in search because you just don't like the one you're with, well, you'll find out very shortly why Tracy truly is the best. And Tracy, we always talk about coverage rates and making sure you have the right prices. And that's what I love about you. You're always making sure people are taken care of.
Yeah, and we're doing something a little bit special right now, so it is a great time to reach out. I am working on the Fairy Tale Challenge. It's a run for Run Disney, but we are raising money for Be the Match, the same thing that Layla Anderson went through to find the cure for her. We are doing that. If you get a quote from us right now, we will donate to that cause. Or if you just want to donate, you can go onto my Facebook page and click on the link and donate. But also, while we've been doing that, we saved somebody recently $2,000 over their company. That information is also on Facebook. So if you'd like to see that company that we saved them money over, I'm tongue-tied today.
Tracy, you're the best. Regardless if you get tongue-tied, she's always working out for you. Give her a call today and ask for that free non-committal quote, 314-328-4260. It's no fib, but you're always in great hands with the Bibb. Tracy, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Go Blues.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK3143999-646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. You can also get them in right now over in the graveyard on the YouTube chat, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. Let's start out with this from the 314. Guys, how much better do you think the Blues would be in the Western Conference standings if Doug Armstrong ended up holding on to Alex Pietrangelo, Ryan O'Reilly, and David Perron? Do you think that they could have made that work salary cap-wise? We've talked about this before.
We did the math, too. They could have made it work.
You could have made it work. It would have been tough. There would have been a lot of, because this happened, then this happened. So there's a lot of reverse engineering that has to take place if you start with the Petro thing. That would have meant they didn't trade for Justin Falk. The Justin Falk trade was really the first of the dominoes that led to where we are today, for better or for worse. Would they be better in the standings? Yeah, I think they would be.
Mind you, too, what they're making, the places they're playing now, if they signed in St. Louis, at least from Lou Korak's reporting, it would have been a little less in terms of salary. But, yeah, I think if you have those three players, you're talking about a top NHL defenseman, you're talking about another top centerman, especially for how Ryan O'Reilly's playing, and a sniper on the power play. I think you're fighting for second and third place in the Central Division.
Since David Perron left, by the way, he has 35 goals and 82 points in 128 games. In other words, he's been the same David Perron.
How many goals on the power play?
Let's see here. So last year, he ended up having 6 goals on the power play. So far this year, he has 6 goals on the power play.
Those 6 goals might take you from like 28th to 23rd.
And we know where he'd be. You know exactly where he'd be lined up, right? So for the Blues, power play goals, Booch and Neighbors both have 6. The next best on your team is 3 from Robert Thomas, Brandon Saad, and Oscar Sundqvist.
Since Drew Bannister's taken over, your top 3 goal scorers on the power play have been Jake Neighbors, Brandon Saad, Oscar Sundqvist.
That's amazing.
3 power forwards.
Yep.
You have no shot from the outside right now. All you score on the power play are net front presence.
Would you consider Perron had a 2-year deal, right?
Yeah.
Would you consider re-signing him this offseason?
I would. I don't think Perron's going to come back here after how it went, but yeah, absolutely
I
would.
don't know. I feel like he might.
I think culture, and apparently BK argued this when I was out.
He's a big advocate of it now.
I've heard that. I think culture is very important.
I don't pay for culture. I'm not going to go pay $25 million for a pitcher that brings culture to my clubhouse. But
Wait, we did that.
We
this
just did
offseason.
that.
No.
Combined with 2 guys.
They paid for Sonny Gray to be a good pitcher who also happens to help in the clubhouse.
But they paid Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn to be good guys in the clubhouse.
But that's what you pay for the back-end starters. Like, they were paying for the $10 million no matter who they signed, and then it just happened that these guys have deals. If you're going to get David Perron for $3 million this offseason.
You'd get him for less than that, I would imagine.
You think?
Mm-hmm.
I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, if you're talking, what would he be? He'd be close to 35 years old.
He'll be 36 next year.
Yeah, so I mean, you're probably talking 1.5, maybe 2 mil.
Oh, I can't tell you how quickly I would do that.
That pissed off attitude, I think, is desperate for this team.
Kapanen.
Yeah.
Blay.
Yeah, that's spot in your lineup.
Yeah.
I'm in.
I would do it.
Would you trade for him?
Absolutely, but Detroit's in a playoff spot. They're not trading him.
There's been talk that they might trade him.
That's Steve Yzerman should just. I don't know what you're doing if you're going to trade David Perron because he's been one of their goals.
He's
now,
an overrated.
They're talking about trading
Are you
Ville
sure
Husso.
they're in a playoff spot?
Yeah, they're in one of the wild card spots. I thought.
Yep, last wild card spot. Right.
Yeah, Husso.
Yeah, no, they're going to trade Husso.
Oh.
They actually need goaltending.
Well, we should go get him.
No, God, no, please, no. But yeah, I would consider it when he's a free agent again. You know what I'd do? I'd consider trading for Pat Maroon from Minnesota at this deadline. I
just bring them all back.
Might as well. Let's do what the Cardinals are doing.
Bring O'Reilly back too, man.
Joel Edmondson's available from Washington.
Why are all my favorite teams
bring
getting the
back
band
Hofer.
back together?
Hofer's already here.
Man,
How do you guys do this?
That every time.
It's just the H that's the same,
Don't
man.
bring him back, actually. That'd be bad for me.
Well, Hofer will be back.
It's always questions and answers that gets me with names. It was Chris Paul, Paul George, and
Well, that wasn't names. That was just the
that
sport.
one was wild.
I got home yesterday, and my wife, the first thing she says to me, "Are you okay?" So what do you mean? She said, "I was in the car while you were talking about the basketball players. I thought you had a stroke on me."
We did too. Kara, we were very concerned.
Oh, somebody else on the text line mentioned how 35 and over players can also get special incentives in their contract.
That's what Bozak
that could help lower the cap hit as well.
He could get less than $1 million.
I'm actually not kidding at all. I would 100% re-sign David Perron this offseason. I would bring him back.
I would do it in a heartbeat. I would do it in a heartbeat because first of all, like T-Bone mentioned, you're putting him on your second or third line because of his goal scoring. And if you're considering you're going to have a lot of young players playing on this team in the next couple of years, man, I think you need that type of player.
I'm just drooling over here about a line of Shen, Perron, and Neighbors. Woo!
Just bring Schwartz back. You could have Shen, Perron, and Schwartz.
I'm not kidding. That actually, it makes a lot of sense. If you're going through your lineup for this upcoming season, I think David Perron makes a lot of sense for what this team is missing right now.
Yeah, and you put Snuggerud with Booch and Thomas.
Right now, I don't think they'll really do it, but
No,
gosh,
I don't either.
it makes a ton of sense.
I mean,
would.
they brought back Sonny after they traded him away at a deadline.
But they brought back Sonny because Sonny had no other takers, and they're like, hey, you want to come play with us? They signed Mackenzie McEachran to a 2-year deal, and then they're like, hey, let's see if Sonny wants to come back.
I think he was always part of their plans.
Do you?
I do.
Good.
I think you're on hopium.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line to get involved in the show. You guys can check us out on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/Wyshynski. 101 ESPN STL. The Graveyard Chat is off and running over there. It's actually been a little nicer today, so go over there, hang out.
Have they talked nicely about me?
I haven't said anything specifically about you.
Oh, well, get at it, YouTube. I'll go check it out.
All right, coming up next.
Let him have it.
Greg Wyshynski talked to a dozen NFL coaches, executives around the league.
Of course he did.
To find out who are the 10 best goalies in the NHL. There was one name that was not a part of that list that has Alex fuming. He's going to cook coming up next here on 101 ESPN. All right, Alex and T-Bone on BK. So a Greg Wyshynski list had Alex fuming this morning. You could have seen this one coming. It's either Greg Wyshynski or Dom. One of the two.
Well, I don't read Doms anymore.
We should do a
so
podcast together.
Oh my God, that would be the worst podcast ever.
If we put Greg and Dom on a podcast with Alex as the third voice, we'd get
You know
Chef's
what?
kiss.
I'm reaching out to both of
There
them.
would be
We're working on
FCC
this.
violations on that podcast.
So this
matter.
list is the top
it
10
does.
goalies in the NHL, according to players and executives around the league. Alex, he asked about a dozen different people, and it was a mix of coaches, executives, players across the NHL. And what they came up with was the following list as the top 10. I think a lot of this is actually pretty reasonable.
Okay, let me ask this before you go into
go
it.
ahead.
I'm already freaking pissed off. So this list is top 10 goaltenders you would want for your team. Not top 10 goaltenders right now. This is looking at the NHL, the top 10 goalies that you'd want on your roster. Overall workload.
The top 10 goalies on our 2024 positional rankings are, for the most part, the names that you would expect. It's just some have clearly played their way up on the rankings. Welcome to the next set of results for the 2024 power rankings.
I hope everyone sitting down is sitting down because you're going to laugh hysterically when you hear some of these
you're looking
stupid
at the
names.
top 10 goalies in the NHL. It's not really there is no further explanation of what that means, but yeah, top 10 goalies right now.
Sure. Go ahead and name them.
Connor Hellebuck.
No argument here.
Number 2, Andrei Vasilevsky.
No argument here.
Number 3, save your argument, but I understand that you disagree with this one. Thatcher Demko with the Vancouver Canucks. Number 4, Shesterkin with the New York Rangers. Number 5, Sorokin, New York Islanders. Number 6, Ottinger with the Stars. Number 7, Saros with the Predators. Number 8, and this is where it gets interesting, Swayman with the Bruins. 9, Bobrovsky with the Panthers. And number 10, Ullmark with the Boston Bruins. They continued from there. Jacob Markstrom was another guy that received votes that was on the outside looking in. Connor Ingram was on the outside looking in. He was the 11th ranked player. Aiden Hill of the Vegas Golden Knights was at 12. And then you get to Jordan Binnington at number 13, the third honorable mention behind the top 10 goalies in the NHL. He, quote, appeared on only 4 of the ballots, but one GM did have him third overall behind only Vasilevsky and Demko. Alex, your response to Jordan Binnington as the 13th best goalie in the NHL. Again, not according to Greg Wyshynski, according to the executives, players, and coaches around the NHL.
I'd like to hear the tape of the executives that told Greg Wyshynski that, because I think they probably said Binnington and he had to cross some of them off to make sure that Binnington was down a little bit lower. Look, I have no problem with 1 through 7 on that list. I think all of those guys, and originally I was like, you know what, man, Thatcher Demko, I just don't know if there's enough runway, but that doesn't matter if we're talking about the goalies you'd want on your team right now. Just like we talk in pitching, would you want this guy? Yeah, I want the long-term future of that goaltender, and Thatcher Demko, when he's played, has been very good, so I can't deny that.
And his runway's roughly as long as what we've seen from Benner. Now, he doesn't have the playoff success of a Jordan Binnington, but the regular season success is roughly the same.
My concern, or my problem with this list and where I start to get really pissed off is when you got to Jeremy Swayman's name. And Jeremy Swayman is also one of those guys that, I see what they're talking about here. He's 25 years old. He's put together a very good season for Boston, but I look at 3 years in the playoffs with him, a .667 save percentage, .911 save percentage, that's okay, and then .875 save percentage. I'm sorry, I just look at that and I say, do I really want this guy? But then you get to the other guys, like Sergei Bobrovsky, cool, fine. I think he's a choke artist in the playoffs, but that's here nor there. Linus Ullmark is the prototypical, this guy's great in the regular season, but if you need him when games matter, he sucks. Listen to these numbers in the playoffs. 2 games he played for Boston in the playoffs, an .860 save percentage. Last year he played 6 games and had an .896 save percentage. You're telling me you want this guy who's almost 30 years old, who cannot win a game in the playoffs, and you want that over a guy who's not only won a Stanley Cup, but has been good in 2 of the 4 years he's played in the playoffs? Get the hell out of here. And then we're going to go a top 12 list before we get to freaking Binnington's name. And you're going to bring up Connor freaking Ingram? Connor Ingram, who has played a career 65 games in the National Hockey League, who has played a career 3 games in the postseason. And you're going to tell me that there are executives around the National Hockey League that say, I would rather have Connor Ingram for the Arizona Coyotes, who, by the way, has lost 5 consecutive games. We want that guy on our team over a Jordan Binnington. I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. The stupid underlying analytics numbers that Dom is going off of, it's just bogus. I think your top 7 are great, spot on. I could hear an argument for 8. Binnington should be 9 or 10 on this conversation.
By the way, we're going to get into Can You Beat the Blues coming up here in about 5 minutes or so. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys want to beat the Blues, send us a text that says, beat the Blues. You're going up against Justin Falk today. We'll get into that here in just a little bit. But I had a little bit of a different takeaway from this, Alex.
Of course you freaking did.
It had nothing to do with Binnington's place on it. I actually would, at this point, have him as like the back half of the top 10, somewhere in that 8 to 10 range. I think that's a more than a reasonable place to put him right now because he is having regular season success, and he's shown us in the playoffs. I've never questioned Binner as a playoff performer. I've questioned, is he a guy that can get you 50 starts where you feel really good about him in those 50 starts? And this year it's opened my eyes a bit to the possibility that he can continue to be that for the Blues or another team, wherever he ends up. I think Binnington is a top 10-ish goalie in the NHL. My biggest takeaway, though, was how many of these goalies in the top 12 are in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
So many of the best goalies in the league right now reside in the East. And when you get to the West, as a side point, most of them are in the Pacific. You look at the top goalies on this list from the Western Conference. It's the Jets, Canucks, Stars, Predators, and Vegas. The Predators goalie is in trade conversations right now. The Stars goalie, all right, cool. The Jets goalie, all right, cool. That's why, in part, those teams are where they are in the standings right now. And the Blues are in a really good spot because of Binnington and because of what the Western Conference looks like goalie-wise right now. When we get to the postseason, it's kind of like when we talk about the NFL playoffs. Okay, cool. You had a great regular season. Who is your quarterback? Can you win with that guy? And if the answer is no, I'm crossing you off the list of teams that I genuinely believe can win the Super Bowl. When we get to the playoffs in the NHL, we are going to judge a lot of these teams by, can your goalie actually win you a Stanley Cup? Now, we've seen outliers in recent seasons. The Colorado Avalanche did not have a great goaltender. They found a way to overcome that because of how excellent their team was around it. But for a lot of these teams, you look at some of what they have, and it's like Edmonton for close to a decade. Every year, it's the exact same story. Yeah. Man, are they good. They've won 18 of their last 20 games. Do you trust them when you get to the playoffs? I think no.
Which is amazing that Stuart Skinner's name is not even in the top 12 when he was the biggest reason that team went on an 18-game win streak. Or, I'm sorry, points in 16 of 18. They won 16 consecutive games. Like, Stuart Skinner's name doesn't even get on there. And right now, he's being viewed as one of the best goalies in the league because of how he's been playing.
Yeah, I think the list otherwise is mostly pretty accurate. I would have Binnington in the 8 to 10 range.
It's hard to deny with 1 through 7 because of the track record and how they've performed this season. It's just the part that I get so frustrated with is every single time you talk to an analyst that talks about Jordan Binnington, it's one of 2 things. Well, the last couple of years at his regular season, he hasn't been any good. Understandably so. But I could look at regular season goaltenders that are pretty bad right now that you aren't talking about because of what they've done in the past. But I also look at it and they'll say, oh, well, because of his antics. Because he's had no antics this season. He's been fine. He has been the only guy that has carried the team on his shoulders for a long portion of the season, and frankly is one of the major reasons why they're in a playoff conversation when nobody thought they would be a month ago.
Can I be honest? I think a part of why he's playing better this year is because he's not had the antics. I think part of it is also because he's got defensemen that, look behind them and make sure nobody's standing all by themselves. We've seen moments this year where it hasn't gone particularly well defensively, but he doesn't react the same way that he did a year ago. I think he has kept his cool, and that's helped allow him. I think the way he's playing in net is actually a byproduct of him being more calm in general. I think he just looked more calm. There was one goal the other night where he pushed too far towards the side where the puck was at the time, and it went backside on him, and he overcorrected. He went too far away from it. That's been so rare this year. Whereas in previous seasons, there were times where he was just all over the place. And I'm no goalie expert, don't get me wrong, but when I can see it, it shows you, okay, there's something going on here where he's just a little overdoing it. He's trying to do too much. And that showed itself in part with some of his quote-unquote antics on the ice as well. We've seen none of that this year.
Right.
He's not overdoing it in any area of his game. He's just going out there and giving you a chance to win every night. That's it. Anytime that he's in net, he's giving you an opportunity. He's expected to be in net tonight against the Edmonton Oilers. We'll have pregame coverage for that one starting tonight on 101 ESPN at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario. Alex, there is one big change to the lineup that the Blues decided to go with. They are going to remove Sammy Blais from the lineup tonight. In his place will be Toropchenko getting this the upgrade in the lineup with Saad and Hayes. He'll be your third-line right winger tonight. and Alexandrov going to be back in the lineup on the fourth line with Sonny and Walker. What do you make of this decision?
I like this decision. First of all, Toropchenko has done more than deserved to be in the top 9. I know we've seen it already, and we've said he's not a top 9 forward.
With this team, though, he's better than what you've been getting out of Sammy.
Right. You know why he's a top 9 forward on this team? Because he's one of the very few players on this roster that goes and stands in front of the net and takes the blow so he can get goal-scoring opportunities. And none of these other guys have done that. I'm at the point now where, and don't get me wrong, I loved what Sammy Blais has brought to the team. I'm at the point now where I think the Blues should kind of be done with the Sammy Blais experience. Keep Nikita Alexandrov in the lineup for the rest of the season. Not because I think he deserves it, but because I think you need to figure out what he is. Because he's a second-round draft pick that you've acted like he's going to get NHL opportunities. You need to start crossing some of these guys' names off of the list if you're Doug Armstrong to figure out, are you a fourth-line forward? Are you a third-line forward? Do you have potential? Because if not, we've got to start coming up with other names. So I like this. It doesn't make a difference in this game. Frankly, you are hurting your fourth line because you're taking Toropchenko off of it, but you need more offense from that third line, and I'd like to see what Alexandrov has to offer.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to get into some NFL quick hitters, but next, it is a game of Can You Beat the Blues? Today's contestant will be Justin Falk. We have 3 different people that will be on the line to go up against him in 3 different categories. The winner will get a Justin Falk signed hockey puck and tickets to see the Blues versus the Kings on March 13th. Can You Beat the Blues? Coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It is our weekly contest called Can You Beat the Blues? You're going up against Justin Falk today. He's got 3 different categories. We've got 3 different listeners on the line right now. Chad, Austin, Lucas, all going to be testing their opportunity to go up against Justin Falk. The winner today will get a Justin Falk signed hockey puck and tickets to see the Blues versus the Kings on March 13th. This is a very simple game. The way that this works, we will have a contestant go up against Justin Falk. Contestant goes first, then Justin Falk in the category. They will name as many different things within that category as they can in 15 seconds or less. So, if you got colors, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, we take your number. We go up against Justin Falk. We give the differential between the two, and whoever had the best differential at the end of this thing will end up getting our grand prize today. We all understand how the game works?
No.
Aye, aye, Captain.
All right, let's go to our first contestant, and that is
this, Pirates of the Caribbean?
Chad.
Yeah.
Chad, what's going on?
Just hanging out.
Chad, you understand the rules of the game. I'm going to need a little more energy out of
Chad,
you today,
come on.
so let's
You need to
go.
stop hanging out.
Let's go, Chad.
Take your shirt off, wave it around, and let's go.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Chad's like, screw you guys. It is 12:23. I do not have that kind of energy right
Chad's
now.
at work. He's got 4 different cubicles around him. He's like, I'm not taking my
He's got
shirt
that
off
headset
right now.
phone on. He's like, could you guys keep it down? People are staring at me.
All right, Chad, you understand the rules of the game, my friend?
I do.
All right, Chad, your category today is condiments. Name as many different condiments as you can in 15 seconds. On your mark, get set, go.
Ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, pickles, relish, hot sauce, Cholula, Tabasco sauce. Oh, boy. Taco sauce, hot, mild, medium.
I got 10.
I
got 10, unless we want to
I do want to
question
ask one follow-up, if you don't mind.
what taco sauce is.
No. Taco sauce is a fair one. You go to, man, if you go to some places.
Chad, true or false, when you said taco sauce, you were really saying Taco Bell sauce, and that's why you went to hot, mild, medium.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, good.
So, one thing that I do want to ask you guys.
Oh, here we go.
So he
those
said
pickles-
hot sauce and then went to Tabasco and Cholula. Are we counting all 3
I would
as
count all
separate
3
things?
because I think there's something that's just called generic hot sauce, and then Cholula is a specific hot sauce. Tabasco's a
Making sure we're all on the
specific hot
same
sauce.
page, we'll give him the 10.
I'm not going to steal anything from Chad. Chad is very excited to be on with us
I
today.
can feel that from him. Chad, go ahead and stay on the line. We'll see if your 10 holds up going up against Justin Falk. How does Justin Falk do with his condiments?
Sauerkraut, relish, ketchup, mustard, mayo, buffalo sauce, barbecue sauce, Eastern or Western, depending where you're from.
Keeping it 1.
Sour cream.
Sour cream in the
All
buzzer.
right,
So I got
before.
8.
I got 8 as well.
Unless
That
you're
means
gonna count
Chad
Eastern and Western.
gets a +2. Chad is our leader in the clubhouse right now with a +2 going up against Justin Falk. Chad definitely knew his condiments.
Man,
Now,
I'm just thinking, if Justin Falk would have started labeling his barbecue sauce, he could have got like 15.
100%.
Yeah, when he said
Or
Eastern or
buffalo
Western.
sauce.
Yeah, or buffalo sauce. Yeah, he could have totally knocked that out of the park.
Yeah, but he didn't.
No, he didn't.
Which means
and
that
Chad is victorious.
is the one that is a leader in the clubhouse right now. All right, Austin is our next contestant. He is also going up against Justin Falk. Austin, you ready to go today, my man?
Yep, let's go.
All right,
there it
you
is.
understand the rules of the game, correct?
Yep.
All right, beautiful.
I like the
Austin,
energy.
you are going up against Justin Falk, and your category today is pizza toppings. Name as many different toppings on your pizza as you can in 15
Don't
seconds.
let us down, Austin.
On your mark, get set, go.
Pepperoni, sausage, Canadian bacon, ham, mushrooms, pineapple. Let's see, what else? Onions, peppers.
Question.
Yeah, that's all I can
I
think
think
of.
we should deduct a point for pineapple because that's a disgusting
Stop
pizza
it.
topping.
I had pizza last night, and pineapple was a part of that pizza.
I don't like it either,
There we
but I
go,
know a lot
Austin.
of people do. So.
We'll give it to you
I'll
then.
give it to him, even though I agree with Austin and Alex.
The
It
bit- the
doesn't
Why do
main
belong.
people hate pineapple on
because
pizza
it's
so
not
much?
allowed on pizza.
But why? That's what I don't
Because
understand.
it's a fruit. What other? Do you have apple pizza? Do you like banana pizza?
Peppers are fruit.
Didn't
Tomatoes are a
he
fruit.
also-
That's like one of the main ingredients.
You don't put tomatoes on a pizza. You put tomato sauce on a pizza. That's
You
a
can do
sauce.
both.
That's not a
You
topping.
can also put tomatoes on
If
a
you
pizza.
do, you're a psychopath.
Really?
Yeah. Austin, you get the point because you said you hated it, although you did forget the best topping there is on pizza. It's olives.
Oh, God, that's disgusting.
Black olives.
Black
Don't
olives
put
or green olives?
Black. You don't put green olives on
They're
pizza.
both disgusting. That's a terrible
I'm out
opinion.
on
All
that.
right.
Sorry. I just had to make sure.
All right. Now let's go to Justin Falk.
So he got 8, by the way.
Knows his pizza toppings.
Peppers, onions, mushrooms, pepperoni, ham, Canadian bacon, sausage, pineapple, ground beef.
Ooh, right before the buzzer.
Ground beef. Just
Nine.
a
I
weird
got him
one
at
to throw
9.
in there.
I think most people would consider that to be a hamburger pizza, but neither here nor there. He got it right anyways. That's a +1 for Justin Falk. I'm sorry, Austin. You
Sorry,
did understand
Austin.
the rules of the game. However, you cannot.
But you
beat
did
the
also
Blues.
pick pineapple like he did, so it makes sense.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so Austin is eliminated officially from the game. Chad is still our leader in the clubhouse. He beat Justin Falk today by 2. Lucas is our final contestant, going up against Justin Falk as well. Lucas, welcome to the game, my friend. Do you understand the rules, and do you believe that you can beat the Blues?
Yes, I do, and yes, I do.
There
All
we
right,
go,
I
Lucas.
love to hear it. I can feel the energy as well coming
Yeah,
from Lucas.
go ahead.
Lucas, your category today is animals that you would see at the zoo. How many zoo animals can you name in 15 seconds or less? On your mark, get set, go.
Giraffe, snake, monkey, panda, bird, elephant, fuck. Oh, excuse me. I don't know. Ostrich.
I don't think that
Come
one. I don't think that one animal. I
Lucas!
don't think that one animal you said, Lucas, would be a zoo animal you'd see.
Lucas, come on, man.
Quick question for you: have you ever seen a lion roar in person? Is that?
No.
Is that? See,
He
that's
gave me the same response that he had to his category.
only in a different tone. It was. Whoa. That's why you didn't say it. I guess because it wasn't a
Stay on the line,
life-changing
my
moment.
friend.
What
We'll
was
see
he
if
at,
Justin
9?
Falk knows.
He had
I got
8.
7.
Eight?
I had
Oh
8
my
because he got
God.
ostrich there right at the end. We stopped paying attention because of the non-animal he threw in.
And the
close enough.
usual button I haven't used the Ferrario needed it.
Hey!
All right, let's go to Justin Falk. Justin, how many animals can you name that you'd see at the zoo?
Lion, tiger, wolf, eagles, moose, elk, giraffe, elephant, llama, bear.
Sorry, just that was a weird one to throw. Also, have you ever heard somebody say lion, tiger, and not follow that up with bear?
Scott, lions,
Lions,
tigers,
tigers.
bears. Oh my!
What
And
did
then
he
you continue
say?
along.
He said lions, tigers.
I
Can we go
went
to the beginning of
llama.
that?
Is that what it was?
Yeah, what was his
llama
third one?
wasn't- Llama was towards the end.
I
which
think
is
he
just
said
a great-
eagle.
Lion, tiger, wolf.
Wolves. Naturally.
Justin Falk is a man. That's why he said it.
He was thinking about his hunting opportunities.
Threw a eagle in there, ostrich,
Llama.
Llama's just a
I'm
weird one,
surprised they
man.
didn't go with an alpaca.
It's an alpaca, not
I'm surprised you
alpaca.
just start naming the petting
That's
zoo.
a Mexican restaurant that you're thinking of.
That, man. I always say the alpaca instead of the alpaca. It's a whole thing. All right.
Hey,
Sorry.
congrats to Chad.
Yeah, way to go, Chad!
Let's go, Chad!
Chad, now you can take your shirt off and wave it.
Already done, boys.
All right, Chad's going home with the Justin Falk signed hockey puck today and tickets to see the Blues versus the Kings coming up on March 13th. Chad, stay on the line. We'll get you information. Make sure that you get in there for both of those prizes. Alex, tell us who made this all possible
It
today.
is powered by Comfort Experts, your independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
You gotta love it. All right, your next opportunity to beat the Blues is coming up next week. The Blues are hoping to beat the Oilers tonight. They are back in action. Puck drop at 7. Alex will have your pregame coverage right here on your home of the Blues tonight, starting at 6 o'clock. Coming up next, we're diving into some NFL quick hitters here on 101 ESPN.
Terry Henderson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they host the Edmonton Oilers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Garber for puck drop at 7. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Let's start out with this. The big news in the NFL yesterday was that the San Francisco 49ers were going to be moving on from Steve Wilks as their defensive coordinator. Guys, we talked about this in an extended version earlier today. Your quick thought on the move was what, Alex?
I'm going to be honest with you, buddy. I didn't hear what you said. Repeat it for me one more time.
The 49ers fired Steve Wilks. Your thoughts? T-Bone?
I think Shanahan made the right decision when you think back to what he said, too. We need a guy that's going to be in our system, and you saw him yelling at Steve Wilks in the final 2 minutes of that final drive in the Super Bowl before going into overtime. I think he knew it wasn't good enough. They need someone that's more creative than what Steve Wilks was.
Here's my question. Who else is out there that would be a better hire than that?
I don't know.
Because I feel like a lot of the defensive coordinators that you'd want are gone by now.
Many of them are. I would hire Bill Belichick personally to be my defensive coordinator. I'm going to go out.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, hey, Bill, I want you to come be my assistant.
I think the thing that's tough is, like, none of us knew who Robert Saleh was before he got that job. He got it and was very good at it. None of us... I knew who he was as a player, but none of us knew how good DeMeco Ryans would end up being as their defensive coordinator. He got that job, was excellent, and became a head coach. I think that one of the best abilities that Kyle Shanahan has is identifying young, hungry, creative minds on his coaching staff. I mean, think of all of the guys that have come from that staff that have gone on to be head coaches elsewhere. It's been mixed results once they've gotten the head job, but they're getting those opportunities for a reason. Many of them were handpicked by Kyle to be on his staff. Steve Wilks was a guy that he brought in because he's like, hey, man, let's get somebody that knows how to do this job at a high level, has done it in the past. Let's see if it can work here. It didn't. My guess is he goes back to the old formula previously. I think he's going to hire somebody from within. Probably somebody that's been on that staff before that he believes, okay, they've got a similar mindset to what I have, and I think they're going to be able to do this job at a higher level. It might fail spectacularly, but the upside with doing something like that I think is worth it. I actually thought it was the right call. It's risky. It's bold. The optics of it are not good. But if you're Kyle Shanahan, everything is geared towards winning a Super Bowl, and I think you have the best chance to do that by not having Steve Wilks as your defense coordinator heading into 2024. All right, next thing up here. Falcons OC Zach Robinson says, quote, all quarterback options are on the table, end quote, heading into 2024. If you guys were in charge of the Falcons, what would be your best case scenario of what your quarterback position looks like, realistically speaking? Like, they're not getting Caleb Williams going into next year.
I was going to say trade into the top 3, but I don't think that's realistically going to happen. I would say Justin Fields. That's best case scenario for you is to get Justin Fields. I think that would make the most sense for Atlanta. I think he provides the best case opportunity for Atlanta to be a playoff contender because you've got all of the weapons in place. And we just saw what Justin Fields looked like when he has one competent wide receiver. Imagine if you've got Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson. So I would say Justin Fields.
I think I would say Kirk Cousins, if you can sign him, if we feel like he's realistic for them. Because when I think about Zach Robinson, I think of a guy that's going to want to run kind of a pro-style offense, and I don't know if he wants to be running the ball like Arthur Smith did. If you had Arthur Smith at coach, I think Fields is the perfect guy. I think you're looking more for a guy that can go under center, can also sling it down the field, and I think Kirk Cousins is that guy. I think Cousins is the best case scenario for the Atlanta Falcons.
Jaden Daniels. That would be my answer.
Oh, so you do think it's realistic to trade into the top 3?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what New England's plans are. Like,
tackle.
Defensive linebacker.
And the other thing is, like, maybe I was unfair of saying that it can't be Caleb Williams. Maybe they could get up to number 1. Trade this year's first, next year's first, trade a piece from their roster. Like, if you're the Chicago Bears and they offered you 2 first-round picks, and similar to what happened last year where you were able to get DJ Moore, maybe they throw in either their wide receiver, number 1 receiver, Drake London, or their tight end, Kyle Pitts. Maybe that's the kind of thing that you could see from Atlanta going over towards Chicago.
Does that hurt your team, though?
If you're Atlanta?
Yeah.
Ultimately, you need the quarterback. At the end of the day, if you get the
but if you
quarterback
trade
right,
2 weapons offensively
just
away,
one of those.
Oh,
guys,
I thought you
not
meant both of
them,
those guys.
2
Okay.
first-round picks, maybe a second-round pick, and a weapon.
I'd trade Pitts away in a heartbeat if I could get Jaden Daniels.
Same.
Just figure out the way to get the quarterback. And if you get that right, now we can start building from there. People will come back to me and say, BK, look what happened in Carolina. Yeah, they got it wrong. They got the wrong quarterback. If they got the right guy, I think we'd be talking very differently. Look at what happened to Houston. I know they didn't have to trade up to get C.J. Stroud, but they took the right quarterback, and everything else falls into place from there. So I would try to trade up. I would try to get a guy on a rookie deal if I'm Atlanta. That would be my best case scenario. If you can't get one of those guys, I'll tell you what I'm not doing. I'm not going out and getting Russell Wilson. I'm not going that route. I would rather run it back with Desmond Ridder this year than go out and sign Russell Wilson to a contract that you're ultimately going to live to regret.
Oh, God, that's like a tie for worst. I don't know if I'd rather have Desmond Ridder or Russell Wilson. Desmond Ridder showed me nothing that I could compete with.
Yeah, at least Russ showed you something.
Yeah, at least Russell, has competent ability. Desmond Ridder has nothing.
He's good at turning the ball over.
Yeah, he is. Well, so is Russell Wilson.
The other team that recently hired a new defensive coordinator, the 49ers, are now in that market. The Cowboys were in that market. There was talk of, hey, are they going to hire Rex Ryan? It was Mike Zimmer, and it was like, oh, guys, contract's not done yet. They ended up hiring Mike Zimmer to be their new defensive coordinator. I love this hire. I think it's a spectacular hire for the Cowboys. Mike Zimmer is a guy kind of like Steve Spagnuolo. He's going to get after your behind. He's going to make sure that you are feeling pressure from start to finish. Now, things went south for him in Minnesota. He didn't have the corners any longer. He's going to have the corners in Dallas. That's not going to be a problem for him. And he's going to have a badass pass rusher up front with Micah Parsons. I think this could go really, really well for Dallas. Now, they still have the same problem they did previously. Mike McCarthy's their head coach. But I like the hire.
Well, that's why you bring in Mike Zimmer.
In the defense.
Bring in Mike Zimmer. So when Mike sucks, you'll be like, hey, at least we got another Mike that can take over.
Do they only hire Mikes?
No, man. They had Jason.
They had Dan.
Yeah, Dan.
Man, they only hire really boring names.
Yeah, just old school
Mike,
names.
Kellen Moore
Jason,
was out there.
Kellen.
Oh, I don't know many Kellens.
Well, just wait till a George comes out. They'll be able to go get that guy. I actually didn't like this signing.
Oh, really?
And maybe it's just because I don't remember when Mike Zimmer was that dominant. Like, obviously, when he was with Minnesota, it was good for a little bit, but then fell apart. I just personally kind of feel like Mike Zimmer's on the back end of the success that he had, and I would have liked to see them go get, I don't know, maybe somebody along the lines of a guy that you haven't heard a lot about, like a D'Amico Ryans, that can come in and impress everybody. Because with that defense, man, I want somebody who's got that young desire, that young ability to come in and kind of change it. I just feel like Mike Zimmer's kind of at the point where it's like, man, we've seen this before.
Yeah,
but maybe it's good for 1 year.
Yeah, I didn't mind it because I think you got a defense that is as an organization, you are in win now mode, so you need to go out and get a proven defensive mind. And I liked Mike Zimmer. I loved him when he was with Minnesota until the back end there. So I don't mind this hire. I'm more of a sucker, though, for the old guys when it comes to the defensive coordinator jobs. Like, I wanted the Rams to hire Ron Rivera. That was one that I had interest in.
I kind of wanted the Cowboys to get Ron Rivera, which I know I just said don't get some old guy. But, I feel like Ron Rivera matches a little bit more the Cowboys than Mike Zimmer.
I have no interest in Ron Rivera. When was the last time you watched
Ron Rivera?
When was the last time? I like Ron Rivera as a person. I think he's a pretty good coach. I think the game has passed him by. When was the last time you watched a Ron Rivera defense? You're like, man, they are making life difficult on the opposing quarterback because of him.
I don't remember the last time I said Ron Rivera has a roster.
When was the last time you felt like Mike Zimmer had a defense that you felt like was...
In Minnesota a few years ago.
I thought that was like the first few years. I thought the last 3 years of Mike Zimmer was bad.
The last year or two, yes, because, again, they didn't have corners. And if you don't have corners, you're screwed. You got no chance given the way that he likes to play. He's blitzing you. And if you blitz and you don't have corners on the outside that can stand up in coverage, you're done. Game over. And so they just didn't have a roster that matched what he was trying to do as a DC. I do not think that Ron Rivera gives you any kind of advantage personally as a DC. So I would not have gone that route. All right, next thing up here as we go through some NFL quick hitters. Guys, who's the team that is most interesting to you going into the offseason? We have now put the 2023-4 season behind us. Chiefs are your Super Bowl champions. Free agents are about to start talking to other teams. L'Jarius Sneed, Chiefs corner, just went on Alpin Adams with Kay Adams and said his message to Brett Veach, the Chiefs general manager, is to pay me. Pay me all of the money. So
he's gone.
That's good. Who is the team for you this offseason that is the most interesting team heading into the offseason?
It's Houston. I think Houston's got an offense that's ready to compete in the AFC. They got to fix their defense. And they seem like a team that you make one big spot signing. Maybe it's Snead if it becomes available and you bring in that cornerback for their secondary. I think they've got the coach, the quarterback, the offense in place to be a difference maker next year in the AFC. So they're my team.
Is it odd if I say Buffalo? Because I want to know what's going on with Stephon Diggs. You mentioned it yesterday, Alex, during the show. Is like that just felt like a divorce that was like waiting for like the kids to get out of the house. You know, I'm fascinated to know if something happens with Stephon Diggs. Like some of these top wide receivers that are like serious question marks are they going to be with their current team? You think of Diggs, you think of A.J. Brown, who was unhappy in Philly. You think of Brandon Ayuk, whose brother's like, Viva Las Vegas. I'm fascinated by what the Buffalo Bills are going to do. And Sean McDermott is on the hot seat, I think, going into the year.
Team that I'm most interested in going into this offseason. No.
Wonder what they're going to do.
Are they going to bring Chris Jones back?
The Detroit Lions. What are they going to do?
What can they do? Like,
They got a ton of cap space.
But what do they need?
$45 million.
Corners.
Defense.
I guess
Corner.
Rusher.
Yeah.
Like the two things they need most
all right, you guys are getting greedy.
Cornerback and defensive end. Or D-tackle. Just pressure.
Somewhere
to go with in Hutchinson that can help get after the quarterback.
So do you go get Snead?
Yeah.
I would do it.
Yeah.
He's going to have an incredible market.
I would look at either of the Chiefs' defenders that are going to hit the market if one of them does, and the Chiefs aren't able to retain them, and I would say, I'm paying you whatever it takes.
And if you're a player that's hitting free agency,
it's a great place to go.
That might be the best destination via free agency right now, second to Kansas City, because of what Detroit looked like last year and what the expectation is this upcoming season.
If you live up to the contract you get, you're like
legend.
the folk hero.
Yeah.
You're the guy that came in and took them over the top.
Yep.
Awesome.
You're a legend.
You've got going into this offseason edge rushers, Josh Allen from the Jaguars, not the other Josh Allen. He's good.
Is the other Josh Allen available?
Brian Burns, Chase Young, Daniil Hunter from the Minnesota Vikings, all guys that are available. Chris Jones. Christian Wilkins is an interesting guy for them. The Miami Dolphins defensive tackle. Justin Matabuke is almost certainly going to get the franchise tag from the Baltimore Ravens. There's some really good players on the defensive side of the ball. Jalen Johnson from the Bears, I think he's going to go back there. But another good corner that could potentially become available.
Is that the most interesting? I mean, we just said team, most interesting division in the offseason, because you've got the Bears who have the quarterback question and they have legitimate options. You've got the Lions, who you just mentioned, the Packers, who feel like they've got their guy and they've got to build around him.
They're kind of Houston Texans territory.
Minnesota's like kind of sleeping under the radar as a team that, like, hey, they were still pretty good without Kirk Cousins, and they've got to decide on Kirk Cousins' future.
The Packers' problem is they don't have a lot of space still, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they still have more of the Rodgers cap hit on their books this year. They do not have very much space available to them. So I'll be curious to see what ends up happening. God, David Bakhtiari, a guy that doesn't play for them, a $40 million cap hold this upcoming season.
That was one of those guys that Aaron Rodgers demanded to have re-signed, and then Aaron Rodgers gets traded.
I was one of Rodgers' best friends.
Me
Making
too,
$40 million, don't have to do anything.
Randall Cobb, you'll be like 55 and still getting to play in the NFL.
They've got some ways to be able to make stuff work, though. Elton Jenkins, they can cut him and save $15 million. Devondre Campbell, they can cut him and save $12.5 million. They can make stuff work this offseason.
And they need weapons offensively.
Yeah. I kind of like their wide receivers. I think they need one more. Like, if they were to go out there and get one more veteran guy, I feel pretty good about where they're at.
Devontae Adams would look good there.
You ain't lying. If they could go out and get, like, Darnell Mooney or Tyler Boyd, just a veteran, you know where he's going to be, he's going to make plays when they're necessary kind of guy, I feel pretty good about what they've got available to them offensively. One other quick thing. Saquon Barkley, it sounds like, is going to hit the free agency market this year. You guys have a spot that you would most want to see him?
Buffalo.
Be fun.
Get them a freaking running back. Buffalo or Baltimore?
Oh, Baltimore would be awesome.
Just get them a running back, please.
That's a great spot.
Yeah.
Baltimore is really good because they desperately need somebody that can
and they'll
go
pay
to that
for it.
backfield.
They value the position in a way that a lot of teams don't. So that's a really good one.
Yeah, that's probably the best one that I think's out there for him, because.
But they'll probably be like, no,
weapon.
J.K. Dobbins will be back, and then get hurt again, and then be out for the season.
Jets, maybe? Oh, no, they've got Breece Hall, but he was kind of disappointing this year. That may have been more the
By the end of the
offensive
season,
line.
he was good.
I was going to say, he was at least a weapon for him, and it was also the quarterback that you were using. Like, all you had was hand the ball
I
off.
felt pretty good about him by the end of the year.
Yeah. Got me second place in our fantasy football league. Come on, man.
Hey, who won that?
Shut up.
It's
I'm like the Chiefs of our fantasy league. Think about it.
Oh, my gosh.
Back-to-back champion. Going for a
you're
three-peat
hated, too.
next year. That's fine. Haters going to hate.
I'd like to see him in Houston.
Oh, that's fine. They do need to
Don't
run
they got
it.
Dameon Pierce, though?
Yeah, but he barely played. They went to
he was
Devin
injured.
Singletary by the... No, he was healthy, and they said
that's
Devin
bad.
Singletary
I
is our
thought he
number
was
one back
injured.
now.
Yeah, that's a good one, too.
like seeing Houston.
I want Houston to load the hell up.
Get
I
Mike
want
Evans.
them to
Go get
load
Mike
up.
Evans if you're
Oh,
Houston.
my God, yes, please. But
sign him.
I feel like they're good on the offensive side. They just need some defense.
Get more. You can
More the
always
merrier.
have more. You got the quarterback on the rookie deal. Now is the time to just push.
I think you should be praying Mike Evans goes to the Chiefs so you stop throwing at Mecole Hardman.
I don't think there's any chance of that. I think they're going to end up with like one of those tier 2 or tier 3 free agent wide receivers, and then they address it in the first round of the draft.
They address it also by making a trade for Mecole Hardman.
Yeah, right. That's the way that they're going to do it. Like a Calvin Ridley, Darnell Mooney, DJ Chark. One of those guys will be a Chief. Josh Reynolds would be a Chief. That's the guy. Josh Reynolds will be a Chief.
What a boring name. That's going to win them a Super Bowl.
All they needed to do was have somebody that could be like Juju Smith-Schuster. Can Josh Reynolds be that?
Yeah.
I think he can.
Such a boring name for them to win the Super Bowl with.
Junk Drawer is coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
I always tell you to go down to Auto Center's Nissan Herculaneum, and I put my money where my mouth is because we in the Stalter household, we just got a pre-owned Pathfinder that we love, and we got it from Auto Center's Nissan Herculaneum. Unbelievable financing options available that couldn't come at a better time with where rates are right now. No money down, no payments for 90 days, 0% APR for up to 5 years. It's all available at Auto Center's Nissan Herculaneum. Plus, enter to win a brand new Polaris ATV and grab a hot dog just for stopping by. No purchase necessary. That's all there at Auto Center's Nissan Herculaneum. One spot. They've got over 700 vehicles on the lot, pre-owned and new Nissans. They give you the free lifetime complimentary warranty that comes with new Nissans, the 30-day return promise, and you're going to absolutely love the service as well at Auto Center's Nissan Herculaneum. So when you head out there, tell them Stalter sent you. Let them set you up in your brand new ride. It's Auto Center's Nissan Herculaneum.
'Tis the season to avoid the sneezing. Protect yourself from this season's triple threat, COVID, RSV, and the flu. Vaccines are available now. Talk to your doctor today and get protected. A message from the Illinois Department of Public Health.
Alex and T-Bone on BK. Congratulations are in order. Woo! Yeah, go Alex!
Are you guys talking about what I told Mike Ryder in the break? Because that might have got me in trouble.
Baby number 3?
Baby number 3. This is a perfect.
He did it.
It's a perfect end to our trilogy. That's been Alex's vacation, because you've heard me complain about, handling 2 kids by myself for a week straight.
And I went, he needs another.
Being in Disney World, and you know what Katie and I said? We want one more.
Did you? This was planned, right? Like you were like, yeah, let's do this one more time.
So here's here was our mindset behind it.
3 under 4?
Yeah. 3 within, because our oldest will be 3 when the new baby is born in August. The middle will be 2, and then we'll have the newborn. So we talked about this, and we talked about potentially waiting a little bit to see, but what we said, and my whole thought process with this, and I want people's thoughts on this, because the text line's always so great. We said, I don't want to get out of diapers, because as soon as I do, I'm going to be done with it. As soon as Adelaide is, and we're working on potty training with her, but as soon as Adelaide gets out of diapers, and then Emma's going to start getting out of diapers, because that second child always is watching, and she's already interested in the potty, I'm going to be like, man, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to do the bottles. I don't want to do the diapers. I'm done. And we've always wanted a bigger family. We talked about 4, and then after 2, I said, I'm not having 4 freaking kids.
Sure.
And we wanted to try for a boy. Now, God works in mysterious ways, and when we tried, and I was like, it's probably going to be a boy. Katie's symptoms were all different. She's craving salty food. She wasn't sick. She was always hungry. I was like, this got to be a boy. We got results back, and it was a girl, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. I got 3 freaking girls.
I say keep going till you get a boy.
No, because that's when I have 5 girls, and I'm not doing that. So we decided that we wanted to try for 1 more, and at first it wasn't working. And I was like, well, maybe we're not supposed to have. Maybe we're only supposed to have 2. And then she got pregnant, and then the whole panic set in of I don't know how I'm going to handle 3 children.
So we are the opposite. We are not trying again for probably the next couple of years. We are going wide range apart.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine staying in this zone for the next, God only knows how, next year or so, right?
Yeah.
Now that we're in it, I want some time apart.
Understandable.
Not because I don't enjoy it. I love the hell out of everything that has been being a father to baby Luca. It is the best thing that has ever happened to me. Every day I get home with a smile on my face because Luca is there, right? It's genuinely the best thing ever. But it is exhausting. There is so much that goes into it, and it changes everything. And I got 1. You did this twice.
Yeah.
And now you're like, you know what? Let's get right back into it.
Yeah.
You're that guy that the season comes to an end, and instead of taking a couple of weeks off, you're like that old wily veteran, right? You're Adam Wainwright at the back end of his career.
Way to go. I probably am going to start a country album by the time I'm done having kids.
And instead of taking a couple of weeks off to rest and recover and allow yourself to, get through some of the bumps and bruises that took place over the course of the season, you're like, no, I'm going to throw today. I took 2 days off. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, while my arm is dangling on a thread, I'm like, let's just keep doing this. I mean, I will say, we've been very lucky with both of our girls. We got through, sleeping wasn't an issue. The being up in the middle of the night a lot, those girls were both incredible in terms of that growing period. And then it's now you're getting into the toddler stage. But the way I looked at it is toddler stage is going to be stressful no matter what. what.
Sure.
And so it's like, we'll just find our way through. But, I mean, we're excited. I'm just very nervous. So if anybody listening out there has 3 kids, I'd like to know how you handle that, because I don't know what to do. When you're in zone defense, man, I am very concerned compared to man-to-man defense.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, I had a buddy that had one girl. They wanted to try for another. They had, for a boy, excuse me. And then they had triplet girls instead.
Dude, the first ultrasound we did, I said, tell me there's only one heartbeat. And the doctor, thinks he's funny. He's like, no, I see 2. The blood rushed from my face. And he goes, there's only one. I go, oh, my God, thank you. I don't know how. 3 girls is expensive. Yeah. I don't know how I'm going to handle that. That's 3 weddings.
Yeah.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, our first was what convinced us to have a second. Our second convinced us that 2 was more than enough.
Well, I told Katie when we got back from Disney World, I said, you're lucky we were pregnant before we went to Disney World, because we wouldn't be trying when we got back from Disney World.
God works in mysterious ways, right?
We're done. Also, shout out to my dad, because now he is going to have 6 granddaughters.
Holy
my sister
cow.
has 3 girls, and they're not having any more kids. We're having 3 girls, and Katie and I both said we're done after 3. So the Ferrario name dies here.
Good luck.
Good luck.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm Brandon. Kylie. Congratulations to Alex and Katie in all seriousness. Baby number 3 on the way. Very happy for you guys, despite what that's going to mean for you in your own personal life.
I'm going to look very disheveled in the next couple of years.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're diving into a game of Believe It or Not. It's T-Bone's favorite segment of the week. So if you've got anything to throw in there, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. And the YouTube chat is off and running over in the graveyard, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. But coming up next, Torey Krug sounds a little more open right now to being traded at the deadline than he did at this point last year. Discuss his comments coming up next year on 101 ESPN. We'll get to the Blues conversation that we wanted to here in just a moment, Alex. But first, we got to get to something in the NFL. A little bit of breaking news. This is coming from the Seattle side of things. We were talking a little bit about the movement on the quarterback carousel this offseason. One team that probably will not be a part of that is the Seattle Seahawks. According to Adam Schefter, Geno Smith has a $12.5 million incentive in his contract that becomes fully guaranteed on Friday. He was informed earlier today that he will remain on the roster through this week, allowing that money to trigger, which essentially means he's guaranteed to make at least $12.5 million against the cap this upcoming season. He ain't going anywhere. That's the Seahawks telling him, you're our starting quarterback. We're going to build around you going into this offseason. What do you guys think of the Seahawks deciding to go back with Geno Smith in 2024?
I mean, I don't mind it because I don't know if there were any better options out there. You weren't drafting in a position to get a better quarterback, and maybe I'm wrong there. I don't think you were going to be in the Justin Fields sweepstakes or any of these other quarterbacks that might become available, and at least Geno Smith knows your system, he knows your team, and you're bringing in a new coach that might be able to work better with him. So I think this was their best case scenario. They're kind of stuck in this purgatory right now with Geno Smith.
That's kind of where I am. I think you're kind of stuck with Geno for now, to where you stick with him. He still remains as kind of that transition quarterback. And depending on what happens in the draft, if someone like a Jaden Daniels falls, or maybe they really like a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix and end up going in the second round, maybe they draft him and then bring him in and kind of develop under Geno Smith. But I just don't know if they are ever going to be in the running for like a Kirk Cousins, trade for a Justin Fields. I think this was the best move for him.
Yeah, I think next year's the year that you maybe see what is out there quarterback-wise. This year they don't have their own second-round pick. They traded that to the Giants for, I think it was Leonard Williams, if I'm not mistaken, in that deal. So all you've got is number 16 overall. My guess is they'll probably end up trading down in this year's draft. That's what they typically do anyways. But trade down, accumulate more picks, go ahead and run it back with Geno Smith, see if the new offensive system is something that ends up working out for you. If it does, great. If not, then next year, it's time to go ahead and turn the page. But I don't mind them bringing back Geno Smith at all. When you gave him that contract last year, the overwhelming likelihood was you got him for at least the next 2 years, and then you can reevaluate.
I would almost bet that they draft Michael Penix Jr. and have him as the
Makes a lot of sense,
backup
man.
that works under Geno Smith this year, and next year gets an opportunity.
Yeah, T-Bone, I think, brought up the right names. It's Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix as the two that are kind of going in that range. There's a lot of buzz, by the way. J.J. McCarthy's going to go top 10 this year.
If he goes
the
top
former
10,
Michigan quarterback.
that team is going to be Carolina Panthers 2.0.
If we had to guess somebody in the top 10 that ends up taking J.J. McCarthy, here are the teams. You tell me when to stop of which team you think it'll be that jumps in on him. Chicago at number 1, then Washington, New England.
Stop.
Who? Washington or New England?
I think they're going to trade down New England and draft J.J. McCarthy and have a Mac Jones 2.0.
If they don't do it, Arizona, the Chargers, the Giants.
Chargers are the
I'm
Giants.
saying Giants. Chargers makes sense too with Harbaugh.
That's the one I thought
They've
of.
got Herbert.
Yeah,
but
they'll trade Herbert
I
because
think it's
Harbaugh wants
Giants. That
McCarthy.
is such a Giants move. Draft the wrong quarterback in the NFL
Yeah,
draft.
but I don't think Brian Dable wants a J.J. McCarthy. I think he would want a mobile quarterback.
Let's just be honest. Brian Dable's probably not there after this year.
I was going to go Tennessee.
Tennessee
was the
makes
one that
sense,
I
too.
thought would
It's
probably
funny we
do it.
stopped twice before the bottom 5.
I think he's going to go top 10, man. It's crazy. I don't view him as being that. I thought maybe a team like Seattle would make sense for them. They're
but he's
going
to go top 10.
That feels right to me.
He's going to go top 10 because a team is stupid. He shouldn't go top 10 because of talent.
I tend to be with you, but teams really like him. He's young. He's got a little bit of talent.
Teams really liked Mac Jones, too. How'd that work out?
That's fair. At least this guy has a little bit of mobility, though. Mac Jones was a statue when the league is going completely the opposite direction of that, and the Patriots were like, oh, please, I want that. By the way, T-Bone, I'm still not letting you live it down that you said he was going to be the one that wins a Super Bowl first. He might be the one that gets benched and is out of the league first out of that group of quarterbacks.
In my defense, who else got drafted in that draft?
That's a fair question. I got to go back.
I don't think anybody else ended up like. I think the correct answer was nobody's going to win a Super Bowl from this draft class.
I'm looking it up now.
The draft with
2021 draft.
Justin Fields, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance.
Trevor Lawrence is the best one on there. Like, I have serious questions if he's the guy in Jacksonville long term.
I think Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence could win it before Mac Jones.
I don't feel so bad about. I mean, I was clearly wrong. I'm not trying to deny that, but I don't feel
Tony
bad.
was that draft too.
Oh god.
Oh,
Offsides.
Steal.
Bad draft. All right,
Super Bowl champ.
Torey Krug is a member of the Blues right now, and I think he's going to be a member of the Blues beyond this deadline and honestly beyond this offseason. I think he has built more value not only because of his play, but because of the play around him this season than what he had coming into this previous year. Man, he's your point man on the power play. He's a legitimate second pairing defenseman for you. At a very minimum, he's competitive as hell out there, and you kind of know what you're getting on him, both good and bad when he's on the ice. Alex, Justin Falk, I don't know what to expect out of him, both health-wise and performance-wise. Perunovic, the main goal this year, the number one priority was to keep him healthy, and he has not been able to stay healthy, which means that he's no longer on the ice to help you on the power play. And despite him not being out there, guess what? The power play has continued to perform with Torey Krug out there. So I think he's going to be a part of this team for a while.
I do too. I did think that, and JR did a phenomenal Q&A with him on The Athletic, but I did think he sounded a lot more open to the idea than what he was, at least from what we heard in the offseason, and a lot of that might just be because of Philadelphia. The thing with Torey Krug is...
I'll read these real quick for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because that's what I was going to get to, is he was asked by Jeremy Rutherford for his thoughts on whether or not he's going to be here past the deadline. Here's what he said, Alex. I want your thoughts on this. These things happen in sports. I'm just going to take whatever's in front of me and make decisions, whether it's here or elsewhere. That's just how you have to approach it now. Going through these things last summer, there's always a possibility, and you always have to be open-minded to certain things. So we'll just see what happens. I don't think it's going to be a distraction. I've seen so many different things in this league, and at the end of the day, you're judged on how well you play. And if you're not playing well, neither your current team nor any other team is going to want you.
Basically what he was saying, at least if I could read between the lines, is I took everything in the offseason and decided Philadelphia wasn't where we wanted to be, and I'm going to do the exact same thing at this trade deadline and the offseason. If a team is an ideal landing spot for me, I'll pounce at that opportunity. But if not, then I'm going to stay where I'm at. Torey Krug, like it or not, is a better player this season than what he was last season. And I don't know if people would argue with that or if they believe it, but he's got a energy side to him that you know what you're getting every single night. Now, keep your snarky text to yourself. Yeah, I know what's happening. The goals are going to go in behind him. He plays aggressive. And sometimes a guy that doesn't look good might also be because the pairing mate just isn't the right guy for him. And I think Colton Parayko fell victim to that. He's starting to look better, a lot of it because of his, but I think Nick Leddy's performing well. You have something right now in Torey Krug and Matthew Kessel, and maybe a lot of this is because of the way Matthew Kessel plays, but it's a player that at least you could build around and gives you an opportunity to win. And with Scott Perunovic, like, you're hoping Scott Perunovic becomes Torey Krug. And Scott Perunovic hasn't shown you the ability to do that, and at least Torey Krug has been there for it. So I don't know what happens. I think if a team calls and says, hey, we'll take that whole contract on because we want Torey Krug, I think Doug Armstrong's in a position that you might need to say, yeah, we're going to have to. But it just seemed to me when I read that, it's like, man, he's more open to it right now, which I think the way that the Blues defensive have been playing, I think there's going to be more calls about guys on that defense than what there were last year.
I think they're going to have calls on players all over the roster. I think Buchnevich will get calls. I think Kyrou will get calls.
I think Leddy's going to get calls
on Leddy, on Krug. I think you'll get a call or two on Perunovic if he gets healthy before the trade deadline.
Sonny, you're going to get phone calls on.
Sure. Brandon Saad, I bet you people will at least ask about. Why not? He's a fourth-line player that can play up in your lineup if you need him to, has that grit that you need once you get to the postseason. Again, I think these are guys that teams will ask about. I think that many of the players that I just mentioned, Doug Armstrong will say, well, I'm going to ask for the world because I have no reason not to. And if you meet it, well, sure, yeah, we can go ahead and listen to that. But for most of these guys that we just mentioned, you're probably not even having real conversations about it. On Krug's comments specifically to Jeremy Rutherford, his full article, by the way, is up right now over on The Athletic. It's worth your time. I think it tells you everything you need to know about where his mind was at in the offseason. I don't think Torey Krug was unwilling to be traded. I think Torey Krug didn't want to move to Philadelphia to play for that team.
And that coach.
And when you have that, I don't blame him. Like, there's certain markets I don't want to work in. Now, there's a lot of markets that I'm not wanted in, frankly. There's a lot of, like, I'm not good enough. I don't work or fit in a place like New York, right? Like, I would never want to do sports radio in a place like Miami. They don't actually care about sports, so what am I doing my show for, right? I want to be in a place where it's passionate and there is a real fan base that is interested in the stuff that we're talking about on a day-to-day basis. For him, he didn't want to play in a place. Now, Philadelphia ended up being good.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to play for a team that he viewed as being in the midst of a rebuild. I think Philadelphia thought they were in the midst of a rebuild. And potentially to be traded at the deadline again. So you're getting traded to Philly, and then you get traded from Philly to another team. Man, he's got kids. He's got a wife. He finally got himself situated and comfortable in St. Louis. I don't want to move multiple times over the course of the next calendar year. And frankly, I, as a Blues fan, I don't blame them for that.
Right.
At the deadline, if another opportunity comes, hell, maybe even if an opportunity in Philadelphia came, maybe he approaches it a little bit differently. But I think that's what's different between now and where we were at the beginning of the offseason.
I just think if I'm Doug, there's other pieces on this team that I would rather trade right now than Torey Krug. Like, I think Torey Krug is at least performing this season like a piece that you'd want on your team for the next couple of years trying to exit out of a retool. Whereas at last season, we were talking about moving on because he didn't make sense. But I think a lot of that was because of the expectations of Scott Perunovich. And unfortunately for the Blues and for Scott, like, we just haven't seen that yet this season.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll have plenty more Blues trade conversations as we get closer to the deadline. Coming up tonight, it's Blues versus the Oilers. Pre-game coverage for that one starting at 6 with Alex. And at 7 o'clock, it's Puck Drop with Curbs and Joey right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Coming up next, it's time for Believe It or Not. You give us a scenario, we'll tell you if we're believing it or not here on 101 ESPN.
You would have liked Bradford's version of this.
I haven't been here for 2 weeks. This is going to feel good.
You didn't sing it in Disney World?
No, man. I was singing It's a Small World.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
free. Ooh. Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be? What
Believe
the hell?
it or not, it's just me.
Get the hell out of here! Start the damn thing over again!
9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. You give us a scenario, we will tell you if we are believing it or not.
2 weeks I haven't sung this song and you interrupt! What?
Here on 101 ESPN.
How do you allow this?
It's kind of what Bradford did.
Oh, way worse.
Oh,
way worse.
Bradford, my man.
Every ending of every line was that.
My man, you don't interrupt when I'm singing. Hold on, did he also do it this way though? Me.
More or less. Not exactly, but close. Are you talking about the no mic muff? Yeah, that definitely happened.
T-Bone likes this sound apparently.
Let's play this game of Believe It or Not. Believe it or not, the Cardinals have the same 5 starters in their rotation at the end of the season that they will have at the beginning of the season.
Not believe it. You're going to have 2 of them that are posted together with super glue trying to keep them alive for this season. You know who I'm talking about. So, no, they're going to have to make a trade for somebody who can come in and give them length because, despite what John Mozeliak believes, age is a problem for your pitching staff.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe it either. I think they're going to have to bring in somebody. And I'm not even saying it's going to be a big name like a Dylan Cease. I could see them needing to acquire another number 3 starter at the trade deadline like they normally do because Mo's going to be back at the microphone going, you know what? Age was a big factor in our rotation. Or realizing, hey, Lance Lynn still can't keep the ball in the ballpark. So I'm not going to believe this.
Do you think when Mo makes that statement, he talks about the presidential candidates again?
It depends. Is he bringing in a geriatric or are we going with somebody under the age of 40?
Either way, I think he brings up the presidents.
I should have just said
if he signs Rich Hill, he'll go back.
Is Rich Hill going to be a Cardinal by the end of the season?
Yeah.
It feels
end
like
of the
the
season, beginning of the season.
Guaranteed, yes. I'm not believing this either. I do think they will have somebody different that is in their rotation by the end of the year. And I'm assuming health. With the current 5, it'll be due to you need to upgrade somewhere. Yeah. Alex, what do you got?
Believe it or not, guys, Colton Parayko is dealt before next season.
Not. Colton Parayko is one of the most... There are a few guys that you're just not trading if you're the Blues. You're not trading Colton Parayko. You're not trading Jordan Bennington. You're not trading Robert Thomas. And then you're probably not trading either of Jake Neighbors or Snuggerud. That's probably my core 5 guys right now for the St. Louis Blues. I'm not trading any of those 5s, barring something just crazy that you could get in return. But those would be my 5 guys, so I'm going to say no.
I'm not going to believe it either. I don't think you look to trade Colton Parayko. I think you hold on to him and you view him as a foundational building block, along with a Robert Thomas, a Jordan Bennington, and whatever other forwards you want to throw into that conversation. So I'm not going to believe it.
I think you're going to see people saying that they're getting calls for it. I know our guy David Pagnotta has him on the trade list, but everybody's going to be calling about him because he's playing like a number 1 defenseman. If you trade him, Doug Armstrong is setting this team back further in their outlook. If you trade him, you're a rebuild. Because now you're looking for a number 1 defenseman again, and the only way you get a number 1 defenseman is if you trade for him, or you get him in the top 10 of the draft. So I'm not believe this one. Colton Parayko will finish his career with the St. Louis Blues.
T-Bone?
Guys, believe it or not, you mentioned the trade deadline. By the time we get to the trade deadline, 3 teams in the NL Central will be within 5 games of each other.
I'll say believe it. I don't think anybody's pulling away in this division. There's not any team that I look at, including the Cardinals, and I'm somebody that's actually optimistic about this team. I don't view them as like a 95 to 100 wins, and that's what you have to get to as a pace in order to really pull away by the time you get to the trade deadline. I think the Cubs are going to be fine. I think they've got too good of a defense to just completely fall back. Their rotation should be solid this year. And I think the Brewers are going to be okay. The Reds will be okay. So between all of those different options that I've got available, I think they'll be within 5 games. So I'm going to believe this.
Yeah, I'm going to believe this. The only hesitancy I have with it is I still wonder if there's more for the Cubs. And I know their GM spoke yesterday about how, they're talking, but it's kind of at the end of the offseason for us. But if Cody Bellinger goes there, or if they swoop in and get Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, then I'll wonder if the Cubs separate themselves from the rest of the pack. But as it stands right now, now, yeah, I'm believing this one.
Yeah, I'd believe it too. I don't see anybody running away with it. I think it'll be a 3-team race. I don't know if Milwaukee will be hanging around still. And even if they are, they'll be blowing it up by the deadline. So I'll believe this. I think the Reds, Cubs, and Cardinals are all right around 5 games of each other right now. Nobody's really separated themselves.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. Let's get to the text line from the 314. Guys, believe it or not, the Blues will lose 5 of their next 7 games. Their next 7 games: Edmonton twice, Nashville, Toronto. You've got the Islanders, Detroit, and Winnipeg. That is a brutal stretch, man.
I'm not believing this one. The Blues haven't lost in that type of vein since Bannister took over, and the numbers don't back up how they played.
Lost 4 out of 5 in mid-January.
Who was that?
You lost to Florida, Boston, Philly, and then Washington.
But 2 of those were in overtime, weren't they?
Just one.
One?
The one
Okay.
Boston game.
So that's probably it. But they've been resilient. Like it or not, their numbers don't back it up. Their shots on goal don't back it up. But they found ways to win and get points. And I think the second time when you see a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're going to have a little bit more success. I think they match up well against Edmonton. It's going to come down to goaltending. And I think you're the better team than Nashville. So I'm not believing this.
I'm not going to believe it either. I don't know if they'll be above 500 in this stretch, but I don't know if they'll go through losing 5 of 7. Like I could see them beating Edmonton. I think they're showing right now they're a better team than Nashville. And I think that game against Toronto on Monday, when they have them at home, that's going to be a revenge game. You didn't show up against Toronto.
To be fair, Toronto's going to have potentially 2 of their forwards that they didn't have in that last game in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't see them losing 5 of 7. And then like at Detroit, I think they should be good. Like I'm not going to say they lose 5 of 7. And look, I'm down on this team as much as anyone. They've proven to me that they're not going to lose 5 of 7. You're going to believe this?
Am I a hater if I say this is totally reasonable?
I think it's reasonable, but
It's reasonable. I don't think it's going to happen.
I'm feeling good vibes.
If they do, then you're...
Okay, I'll go out on... I believe it. Edmonton's playing the best hockey of any team in the NHL right now. Toronto is really freaking explosive offensively, and you just struggled against them when they did not have 2 of their 4 best forwards on the ice in the last time around. They will have those guys coming up next Monday. Then you have Winnipeg on the schedule, who has one of the best goalies in the NHL and has been arguably the best team in the West so far this year.
The Blues have one of the best goalies in the NHL.
Fair. And then it's a couple of 50-50 games with Nashville and the Islanders, both of whom have really good netminders. And I've got Detroit on there where, like, okay, yeah, that's probably the game that the Blues win. But it is on the road at the beginning of a road trip. I don't know, man. I'll say believe it. I hope that they prove me wrong here. But
if you do that, you're sellers. And we're done. Like, everybody's gone. Well, yeah. I mean, if you go in that type of stretch, you're not a playoff team. Regardless if you're 3 points out, you're not a playoff team. If you look,
I don't know. I feel like that's what all of the Western Conference wildcard teams
but
are
Doug
right
Armstrong's not going to sit there and convince himself, like, we're going to keep these guys and let them run. You're going to trade Scandella. You'll trade Sundqvist. You'll try and get something for one of your players. Like, all of those teams you're talking about in that stretch are all playoff teams. And the games where you've won 7 of your last 9, they're not as much well, at least in the most recent stretch. Like, you beat Montreal and Buffalo. Those aren't playoff teams. So Doug's a very honest man, and if that happens, the scenario you're talking about, you're sellers.
I don't know, man. Like, so over the last month, Nashville has lost 7 out of their last 10.
But I think they've won 3 in a row, haven't they?
No, they just won 1 in overtime, but they've lost 4 of their last 5. The LA Kings have gone through a horrible stretch since the beginning of the year. Lost, just all over their schedule. They were at one point 27-4. They are now 24-16-10 on the season. The Minnesota Wild have been erratic all season long. They're finally starting to play better, but they went through a stretch at the beginning of the year as well. They were 16-14-4. Then they were 18-20-5. So they won 2 of their next 10 games. The entire Western Conference that you're battling with right now for one of those playoff spots. I didn't mention Calgary because we know what they're going to be doing at the deadline.
Yeah, but
they're the same as you. And they've all had a recent stretch that's worse than what I would be talking about by losing 5 out of 7.
Yeah, but I still always go back to the Paul Stastny deal. Like, they were 2 points out of a playoff spot, and Doug said no.
But there's nothing that you're going to get of significant value at the deadline. That's why I don't think that I would see them as like a true seller.
Yeah, but that's what we feel like. I think Doug would view it, if I could get a 4th-round pick for Marco Scandella and a 4th-round pick for Oscar Sundqvist, that loads me up with 7 picks in the top 4.
Man, those are scratch tickets at best.
Yeah, like, but they're trade assets. They're all trade
Fourth-round picks?
Yeah, but if you combine it with
that?
But if you combine it with a player and a second-round pick, you're getting something better than a seventh-round pick.
I mean, sure.
We've seen it in the past.
I think if he goes
the value
sell
of having those guys on the roster and potentially making a playoff run is worth more than a couple of fourth.
But if you trade those guys away, you're also not talking about the draft picks that are coming in. You're talking about more playing time for other guys. You're talking about more playing time for Tyler Tucker. You're talking about
who cares?
More playing.
That
Doug
guy's been
does.
passed over by everybody that's been on your depth chart over the past 2 years. There's no reason to consider him as part of your future.
That's how we feel.
But the
Doug
Blues
Armstrong
clearly
feels
feel it.
different.
They're showing you based on their actions. They're putting everybody that's come up from the AHL. Even Rosen got an opportunity
you
over
don't
Tyler
speak
Tucker.
ill of Callie Piss Missile
I'm not
Rosen.
saying anything wrong about Callie Rosen, but when he's getting an opportunity after he had just come up from the AHL over Tyler Tucker, it shows you where Tyler Tucker's on their depth chart right now. He's not a guy that is making any decisions for me at all whatsoever.
I don't think these 7 games that we're talking about, I don't think they determine if they're sellers. I think if they end up selling, it's because Army thought they were sellers before the 7 games. And that is whether it's the small deals that you're talking about with Scandella, or he goes kind of scorch earth and trades Pavel Buchnevich. Like, I don't think these 7 games, like they lose 5 of 7, they lose 7 in a row. It doesn't tell me that Army decided on the 7-game stretch. It tells me, Army felt like they were always sellers and was willing to blow it apart no matter what.
I think Doug decided that. I think the stretch where they won 7 of 9 pushed him in a different direction of, you know what, let's let these guys run with it. But if what happens in BK's scenario, Doug goes back to, yep, you know what, they're exactly who I thought it was.
All right, let's get a few of these really quickly. Rapid fire edition for Believe It or Not. Believe it or not, Carlson finishes the season with more starts in center fields than Tommy Edman.
Not. Next one.
Believe it or not, the Blues will trade at least one of Zach Dean or Bolduc at this year's trade deadline.
I'd say not because of the deadline. Offseason, I would say believe it.
I'll believe this. I think if Army is going to be a buyer or be kind of in the middle, I think he's looking to get a top 9 forward that can come in and has control. And I think he may try and capitalize on Bolduc and try and tell him. I don't think Bolduc has a future here in St. Louis, and maybe I'm the only one there. But
I think Bolduc has more of a future than Dean. Especially for how this season has gone for Dean. Like, I think they thought Dean was a top 9 forward. No disrespect to him, but Dean's looked like a 4th-line forward this season. At the beginning of the season, and maybe they thought it was lingering. Yeah,
like maybe maybe that's just what it is, and maybe it's both. Maybe both could be gone.
Yep.
But I would say right now I would bank on Bolduc being
Zachary
a
Dean
trade chip.
in 37 games in the AHL this year has 3 goals, 3 assists, and is a minus 13 on the ice.
He's been playing 4th-line minutes for him.
He is 21 years old, still very young, but
nobody's writing him off. But
it's been a tough start for him so far in the AHL. All right, coming up next, are the Cardinals really going to explore a 6-man rotation early on in the season? I'm not mad at them if they do. I just want somebody to explain to me what the positive is for this potential route. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Jared Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Blues back in action tonight as they host Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for puck drop at 7. The Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So are the Cardinals really going to explore a six-man rotation? It was something that was asked yesterday of Ollie Marmol. Derek Gould brought it up. Here's what Ollie Marmol had to say when Derek asked him about the early season schedule and whether or not that could be something they consider.
Usually you want guys on a 6-day leading into kind of the beginning of the year. So there's different ways we've kind of mapped it out. And as we get closer, we'll see where we're at health-wise and make a decision.
Okay. So that is the most inconsequential answer possible. He essentially said, yeah, we'll see.
Shrug
Fair
emoji.
enough.
Way to go, Ollie.
I will say this on the front end. I appreciate that the Cardinals are now seemingly more willing to explore these newer concepts of what the entire rest of the league has been doing for a decade, as opposed to being so stuck in what the Stone Ages were of what baseball was.
Like where Lynn and Gibson are from, the Stone Age.
Fair.
Yeah, but they've changed.
But they're willing to explore, like, hey, what does it look like if we need an opener on a day? What does it look like when we use our closer in the 8th inning, if that's where the biggest possible scenario is?
What does it look like if our catcher plays at the left field?
Exactly. Just a bunch of different unique opportunities for them.
What if Matt Carpenter plays shortstop?
Might as well see. Might as well find out, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that this is necessary for them. I understand the early portion of the season can be a bit daunting. Derek Gould wrote about it, and he said the following: inserting a sixth starter into what that opening week of games would allow for the starters to maintain the 6-day schedule that they usually have during the end of the spring. They open with a 7-day road trip that starts with 4 games at Dodger Stadium. Then they go south for a 3-game series in San Diego before ultimately heading home to open the season at Busch Stadium. In total, they play 8 games in a 9-day stretch after leaving Florida.
Are you excited for the schedule excuses that you'll hear and you'll back up at the beginning of the season?
Sure. I don't know why that would make you more likely to use a 6-man rotation is what I'm confused by. If you've got more games in a consolidated area number of days, I want the most bullpen options possible. My starters are less likely to go deep early in the season than they are later on in the season because of how difficult it is to get ramped up all the way, if we're being honest, during a spring training routine. And when you have so many games in so few days, man, I got to have guys that are fresh coming out of my pen. And if you add that extra starter to your rotation, by virtue of him being your 6th starter, he is the worst one possible in your own mind. So Zach Thompson, Matthew Liberatore, these are the 2 guys that are at least being considered for that 6th starter spot. Both of them are likely to go 4 or 5 innings on that day, which means you have to cover more innings by your bullpen because you inserted them. You're not going to use them on any of the other 5 days or any of the next 5 days because you have them inserted into your rotation. I actually think this makes it more difficult to make it through that early portion of your schedule than if you just go with your 5-man rotation and have 8 guys coming out of your bullpen. I'm not saying I'm right on this. Maybe I'm missing something. Can you guys think of a reason why the 6-man rotation would actually be more beneficial for the Cardinals?
Part of it, my reasoning is they look at it as they want to see more of Zach Thompson and Matthew Liberatore, and they know they can't be a top 5 pitcher in the rotation because of the players that they have, but they believe one of Zach Thompson or Matthew Liberatore is going to be able to force the conversation of maybe being a starter for them. You don't want to send them down to the AAA, so you say, let's do a 6-man rotation so we get more opportunities for these guys, and even if it's 4 innings or 5 innings for them, that's what they were going to be used for in that sense anyway, and you're talking about the bullpen there. But I think they went into camp with a internal competition between Thompson and Liberatore to make this roster, and it's let's carry this over into the regular season if they both pitch well and see who gets to be the 6th man to fight for a rotation spot.
It's interesting because I'm not sure that those guys are battling for a roster spot. If I'm being candid, I think both of them will start the season in AAA.
See, I think one of them is going to start here.
Okay.
I think one of them has the upper hand on like a John King, especially when we found out that he has an option, because the way Zach Thompson ended the season and at least what John Mozeliak tried to pump into us at the offseason, talking about how Libertor's made a ton of strides in the offseason.
I call that coach talk. I think I don't really have a reason why you would pinpoint a 6-man rotation to start the year. If you had a young rotation, I could totally see where you convince yourself of it, of like, okay, we've got, like, instead of Lynn and Gibson, say they had like Libertor and Thompson, for example, at the back end of the rotation. I can see how you convince yourself a 6-man rotation to kind of slowly get into the rhythm of, instead of having 5 days off like they'll do in spring, to 4 days off between starts. This is an older rotation. These guys know what it takes. So I'm a little surprised.
Selling point of it is these guys know how to go pole to pole. They know what it takes. And now you're selling me on something different. And I don't know that the Cardinals are necessarily doing so. Like we said, that is a very non-committal answer that came from Ollie. But
I think that was more of the, let's at least keep in the mind of Libertor and Thompson and anybody else that's competing for a rotation spot that, hey, we're dangling out this six starter one. I do think Libertor or Thompson have a shot to make the roster. I don't even think they're competing with King. I think it comes down to, do the Cardinals want to have a long man / swing man in the rotation for if they do go with a 5-man rotation to start the year? That way, if, like, say, Matz ends up having a bad outing or Lynn has a bad outing, okay, instead of having to burn through a couple of bullpen arms, let's throw Thompson for like 3 innings to kind of slow things up.
And I would say that's more Andre Palante's role for this team.
See, I think Palante's competing with John. If King has competition, I think he's competing against Palante, who's like a honorary left-handed guy because he only gets lefties out. Now, if that changes in spring, like this death ball that he's working on becomes a big strikeout pitch, and it can help get righties out along with lefties, okay, now we can pull Palante's name to the side and say, okay, either he is a 1-2 inning guy or he goes into the long roll that you're talking about. But I think going into camp, at least in my mind, and I would assume this is how the Cardinals are viewing it, is we've got our one lefty and JoJo's a lock, and then it is we want to carry one more for matchups in the middle innings, and it is between John King and Andre Palante right now.
And I would view it as you have 5 guys that are pitching in the 7th through the 9th inning going into the season. It's Helsley, Gallegos, Romero, Kittredge, and Middleton. And you just figure out the results that you want to go with there. Like, Middleton has reverse split, so you can use him against some of those lefties as well. JoJo Romero, certainly some of those lefties. But those are your 5 guys that you're using in leverage spots innings 7 through 9. I think Fernandez is making this roster. I don't think they added him for no reason. He's the Rule 5 guy that they got. If it goes horribly awry in spring training, okay, we can have a different conversation. We'll get to that by the end of the spring. But as of today, I would be surprised if they decide, hey, go ahead and go back to Boston. We don't want you. I think Fernandez is going to make this roster. So that means you have 2 roster spots that you're working with. John King, who is, I think, going to make this roster because of what you just said as the left-handed reliever. And then you've got the one spot that's going to come down to, likely, Palante, Thompson, Liberator, Graceffo, any of those other guys that could potentially be a long man. What is more valuable? Because we know how rarely they actually use their long man, and now they have starters that are expected to go deeper into the games. Is it more valuable to just put Andre Palante into that role where you know what you're getting out of him for the most part? It's fine. It's not going to be anything that crushes you. And he's used like once a week. Or is it more valuable to put one of Thompson or Liberator in that role, when instead they could be going down to AAA because you know you're probably going to need them at some point this year as starters at the big league club? I think what they'll ultimately come to the decision is it's more valuable to have those guys start the year down in AAA, and then whenever an injury does take place, and it will take place at some point this year, you go ahead and bring up whoever is performing better between those 2 guys. So I don't think they're going to do this. I don't think you're going to get to a place, by the way, if they went to the 6-man rotation, Palante would probably be the one that is sent down to AAA. He wouldn't have the spot on the roster. It would be one of those 2 guys that we just mentioned. And now you're even lighter in the bullpen. So I understand why it's being brought up. It is a creative option that teams like the Dodgers and the Giants and the Rays have gone to in previous seasons. I don't think the Cardinals have a bullpen that's constructed in a way where it makes sense for them because they don't have guys that are going to go multiple innings.
Still good vibes?
Actually, this is a better vibe than it was yesterday. Yeah. Yesterday was bad vibes. By the way, Jamie Rivers had a great take on the Yadier Molina thing yesterday. A great take. He's like, I think he just wants to be a manager. He doesn't want to come in. He doesn't want to be a bench coach. He doesn't want to be somebody that's like helping out as a side piece over. He wants to be a manager. And when he gets the job as being a manager, he'll be around whenever he's needed.
And he'll have experience.
Yeah, but in the meantime, he's not going to come up here for a random 3-week stretch in Jupiter.
Yachty hated spring training when he was a Cardinal.
He barely wanted to be here during the regular season at the end of his time when he was a Cardinal. And I don't blame him. Like, whatever. It is what it is. But I I thought Jamie had a really good take on it. You can go check that out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
The Rewind is next. All right, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. There's 3 different places that you can go to get it. 101ESPN.com, the free 101ESPN app, or youtube.com/101ESPNSTL, where the studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. That is all presented by...
Sorry, man, I don't do it in back-to-back segments. Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. That was good, man.
All right, coming up here in just a couple of minutes, I'll give you a chance to score a pair of tickets to see Luke Bryan. That's coming up on July 28th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Alex, are you a big Luke Bryan guy?
Love me some Luke Bryan.
Yeah.
A little bit of chicken fried.
I don't think that's him.
No, yeah, that's not him.
I'm not even a big country guy. I'm pretty sure that's wrong.
Yeah, I love me Luke Bryan.
Do you really?
I'm not like the biggest fan of Luke Bryan, but I like Luke Bryan.
I feel like if I asked him 3 more times, he would eventually get to the place where he says, I actually don't like Luke Bryan.
No, I do like Luke Bryan. I'm not his biggest fan. Like, there's other country artists that are above him.
All right, final thing that we wanted to get to today is where we started the show. I promise you, we are not trying to tell you guys that the sky is falling, but when news comes out, we got to respond to it because we're in this moment. And if it changes, we will react to the news that changes as we go along here. But yesterday it came out that Tommy Edman is still limited as they enter spring training. And according to Katie Wu, quote, his workouts will be impacted by his recovery and progress, especially early in the season. His throwing and hitting programs are likely to take most of, if not all of spring to complete. Alex, what's your level of concern about this?
7. Mostly because of past history with Cardinals injuries, acting like it's not that big of a deal, and then it becomes a bigger deal. And I do think, despite what a lot of Cardinals fans believe, I think it does impact the team if it's longer than what we think. Tommy Edman is going to be critical for this team, at least defensively in center field, to start things off until you start to get a little bit more comfort with Jordan Walker and Lars Nootbaar as everyday outfielders defensively. But yeah, I would put it at about a 7. Like, if they tell me that, sure, I'll take you for your word, but I have a little hesitancy from past.
Yeah, I'm at like a 5 right now, I would say. I'm not too concerned if he is unavailable opening day and misses, like, the 10-day minimum, the 10-day IL for an infielder. Where I get concerned is if we go beyond that. If there's a setback or this thing is still not recovering well and it ends up being he's going to miss like a month, or honestly he is healthy and you see that his swing just doesn't look right, then I'll be really concerned because to me they don't have another center fielder on the roster outside of Tommy Edman.
I'm actually not super worried about this yet. If this is something that we get into the regular season and he is significantly impaired, okay, we talk about it, and then at that point, if we're like in May and Tommy is still not at 100%, I'll be worried. I am not super high on Dylan Carlson, but I'm a middleman between between you guys and our audience on Dylan Carlson. I think Carlson is a perfectly adequate 4th outfielder. I think he is more than capable of playing in center field as a starter for 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks for you. If it goes beyond that, I think you're looking for something more. But I think early on in the season, if you have to go to Dylan Carlson because Edman's just not ready to go, I think this team can be okay with that because all they need, decent defense and the opportunity to hit 260 with a little bit of pop. And I think Carlson's capable of that, despite how badly last year went. All right, and right now is your chance to win a pair of tickets to see Luke Bryan coming up on July 28th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to win those tickets. If you're texter number 101, and you can tell us the name of the individual that beat the Blues earlier today. If you can tell us his name, you're going home with that pair of tickets to see Luke Bryan. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.